Hello and welcome to Movie of the Year, the only podcast with the science and the screaming to determine what is the single greatest movie of any given year. My name is Ryan, I will be your host, and this season is all about 1984. It took a long time, but we finally got to the biggest box office smash of the year. It is not Ghostbusters, it is not Gremlins, it is not Amadeus, it is not Repo Man, it is actually Beverly Hills Cop. Tonight we will have a serious talk about the movie, and it will also be a game show, so I will be awarding points to the panelists when they impress me with their knowledge or facts or true things or information. Any one of those four things would be great, and opinions as well. Our first panelist, our returning champ. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together and do not clap because we are in a studio, but the studio audience is mic'd, and we don't want to hear them at all. It's Greg.
Just put your hands together and pray for Greg, because hopefully I can win this show tonight, Ryan. I've come to do battle. I've come to win. All right, my opponent's laughing at me. Is that allowed? Are we good? Can we just do that?
Greg, victory tonight seems unlikely. Your guest tonight is, let me see here. She's the creator of the Whole Movie Podcast, a podcast that I stole for a college class. The Utsterian podcast. Right now, you can catch her on Feeling Seen. Also, she has worked for the New York Magazine. She's written for Wired, and it says here that you were a member of the Rolling Stones.
I was briefly an intern at Rolling Stone magazine in 2008, which is the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so you met Mick and the boys.
I've been touring with them, and it's been very exciting.
Man, you must have been knee-deep in the subprime mortgage problems, right? Where are my 08 heads at?
No, I actually, because every morning, we would put together a news packet, like a paper news packet. We would cut clippings out of newspapers, copy it in the copier, and then hand out packets of those to all the editors for, like, here's the Daily News Roundup. And we got to a point where the directive came down from Jan Wenner, no more financial crisis. Like, I get it. Like, I don't need to see another story. I know the biggest story today is the financial crisis. I don't need it in the news.
People are so over the defining story of our generation.
He ended articles about it. I thought he ended the crisis. Like, I thought he had that much power.
Yeah, Jan really wishes he still had such influence.
He seems like he acts like it. Oh, it's, I should say, that it's Jordan Crucchiola.
It is I, Jordan Crucchiola. Hello.
Thank you so much for being here, Jordan.
Thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to see you again. It's wonderful to be talking movies.
Oh, God. It's a podcast about movies. Do you believe it?
We thought of it, and we were like, can you even do that?
Listen, as someone who's had about 4 of their own, I could never cast a stone. I could never cast a stone.
Podcast a Stone. That's a title for something. Write that down. Podcast. The Rolling Stones.
It's just insulting people.
Guys, we are here to talk about Beverly Hills Cop. And before we get into the nitty-gritty of all the details, just in general, Jordan, do you like this movie? What does this movie mean to you?
I really like this movie. And I'd obviously seen it before, but I rewatched it with my wife and our roommate. And they're younger than me. They're in their early 20s. And so it's fascinating. It's fascinating watching this with people who were not around to, like, explain to them how fucking major Eddie Murphy was.
Yeah.
Like, this guy is a definitive star of the 1980s and 1990s, and, like, so rich, so visible, a comedy pioneer, like, it is, and so, like, I watched it, and, like, there was one point, like, the scene where they're in the strip club. I wasn't even clocking, like, what was happening in the strip club. I just out loud shouted in our living room. I shouted, movies don't have color like this anymore! Because everybody's just bathed in red light. And it just, like, I didn't see it coming, and who does? But, like, watching movies from the 90s and the 80s now has this nostalgic appeal to me of they don't make them like they used to.
Yep.
That I don't say it from, like, a, man waves at cloud kind of standpoint, but I'm like, I kind of get what people meant now when they say that. The richness of it, the just, like, the inappropriateness of some of it that just makes it even better.
Oh, yeah. Dirty.
It's a wonderful thing to dip back into. I miss Judge Reinhold. Like, Yeah, and this was a very cherished movie in my house growing up.
Honestly, the only way that you can get it, I saw a movie that had everything that you're talking about yesterday, and it's Maxine, because it was just mimicking everything, or paying homage
That
to
movie
everything.
was so on the tip of my tongue as I was watching Beverly Hills Cop. 100%.
Yeah, when you said the color, like her walking through the strip joint into the porn studio in the back, it's the same color. I guess maybe you just need naked women around, and that's what brings the color out.
Yeah, they carry with them effervescent lighting.
That was such a major scene in the 1980s movies, especially action movies and action comedy movies, and all the way into the 1990s as well. Like, oh, should we just do this next scene in a strip club? And it's such a movie version of a strip club, because it's not like how strip clubs really are. But all movie strip clubs are the same place.
They might as well have been filmed in the same location, the same stock place.
And it bears no resemblance to what strip clubs are really, at least now, what strip clubs are really like, from what I understand here, gathering through the zeitgeist.
Right.
Yeah.
As somebody who the most recent strip clubs they attended were in Portland, where there's a very social culture around strip clubs in Portland, Oregon, where it's not like the craziest thing to, like, if you're at work, like, hey, you guys want to go grab like a drink at Sassy's after work, and it's a strip bar, and it is absolutely there's nothing about it that feels stylized. It's real, like, it's not divey, but it's like, it's the girls on the stage, and there's not a theatricality that accompanies them.
It's all very matter of fact.
Yeah, and the few strip establishments that I've been into, that is kind of the same thing. Like, it like, closer to Roadhouse vibe than, like, bisexual lighting club vibe.
How many times have I said we need to go to Portland? I'm the guy in our group who's like, we need to go to Portland. I'm saying that
I've heard about the legendary strip clubs, at least.
Yeah, because they're like, and isn't it true that they're not zoned into like weird districts where you have to drive to the like scariest part of town because it's just like the docks after midnight? They're like just like kind of in the city.
At my sister's bachelorette party, she's not a big drinker nor partier. No, certainly has never been to a strip club, but her craziest friend was like, we're going to a strip club! And we ended up at this place called Diablo 2, which we learned after the fact. People like, oh, where'd you go? And I said, they were like, you went there for your sister's first strip club? I was unaware that it was a bit more of and that was in like are we getting lost? Are we lost? Like in the deep industrial zone of Portland? But Sassy's, like I mentioned, like it's down the street from a Whole Foods, I'm pretty sure. Like,
Greg, tell me about your Beverly Hills Cop experience. Did you love it this time? Have you seen it before?
Okay, so most of these movies I watched all the time when I was a kid.
Yes.
But this movie contains boobies, and that was like the only thing we weren't allowed to see in my house.
Heads getting blown up? Totally fine.
Yeah, it was not like the violence. It was not anything else. But until I was like 14 or 15, not even like the actual rated R age, I was finally allowed to see rated R movies. Mm-hmm. And I saw it a bunch then. So it doesn't have quite the same connection as like Gremlins or Ghostbusters, which I just like were on repeat.
Right.
But I liked it a lot, and I had good feelings about it. Watching it this week, I was, like most of the movies of 1984, so much more impressed with it now than I used to be, and I felt like enjoyed it a lot more now than I
It's a
used
real,
to.
like, we didn't know how good we had it kind of situation.
Yeah. For one thing, all these movies from 1984, the first thing they try to be is movies. And I really appreciate that. Like, Beverly Hills Cop is like, well, you're going to have to wait you're gonna have to wait a while in between action scenes because we're trying to connect with characters because that's what a movie does.
Yeah,
and that makes
movie?
that makes you care about the action scenes all the more. But it's really the acting and the very quite funny and often pretty dry. I forgot how dry this movie was. I forgot how dry Eddie Murphy's performance
in
this movie was.
It's funny because the difference between watching as a kid and watching it as an adult is a little bit like ordering food. Like, as a kid, it's always just butter noodles and chicken tenders.
Yeah.
And when you're watching movies, you're looking for the stuff that every movie has, right? Like, this is the stuff that stands out. And as you get older and rewatch these movies, like, Jordan, to your point about how this movie has so much, inappropriateness or weirdness, there's just added stuff. When you're an adult, that's what you look for. You look for the things that you were able to see when
there's
you were a kid.
Like a lot of the other 1984 movies, there's 2 or 3 scenes in this that it's just like, okay, if we're only talking pacing, you probably need to back this out of the movie. Like, But for just like establishing, we were more patient in 1984. We didn't
Sure.
have the TikToks, and it's good for establishing who they are. Like, there's a couple scenes I think with the with Rosewood and Taggart that it's not that they're unnecessary, it's not that they're bad, but they're just like the movie could work without them.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't sing.
Right.
Yeah.
Them.
I mean,
It's those little grace notes. It's those little intangibles.
Hell yeah.
We're gonna talk about the director a lot tonight, but I'm so impressed with him, and obviously Eddie.
So you're saying there is breast in show?
He's breast in show, yes. Even with a movie with a strip club scene, probably the best breast in the movie.
Right, yeah. Truly was a breast in show category for this.
I'm a breast man. I have to say it. Dude made like 5 movies. The last one was abysmal, and he's like, yeah, I guess I'm done.
The last, like, half. But I was like, I understand what you're saying about all of these moments that could be cut out, or the movie would be the same plot-wise. But honestly, I could use 6 more minutes of Eddie Murphy just saying that lie was going to work.
Yeah.
Stupid idiots.
Oh, man. You can tell in that scene that the guy that plays Taggart absolutely loses his shit.
He bit his lip till it bled.
And it's just the subtlety of how Eddie Murphy says things. It's not like that the lines are on their own. If you look at them on the page, they don't actually like do that much for you. But Eddie Murphy's just like so talented. I hope we get a chance to talk about him tonight, Ryan.
You know what? Let's take a break, and then when we come back, Eddie Murphy, star, he won't be here, but we'll talk about Eddie Murphy, star of Beverly Hills Cop. In the late 70s and early 80s, legend has it that over 1,000 people had the idea of an inner-city cop trying to do cop shit in a rich neighborhood. Michael Eisner, Don Simpson, Danilo Bach, Jerry Bruckheimer, Austin Butler, Austin Maid, Dallas Butler, Heverly Bills, Justin Case, Sylvester Stallone, Daniel Petrie Jr., Ingrid Boa Milonis, Valerio Matvosian, and Claude Anaya all claim to have come up with the idea. But it all comes down to this magical moment. Sylvester Stallone, given the script and taking all of the humor out, decided to quit the movie and bring his ideas to the film Cobra, while Eddie Murphy stepped into his spot. Hey, Sly, what's more memorable now, Beverly Hills Cop or Cobra? Nostalgia is a lot like G.I. Joe. It hates Cobra. Beverly Hills Cop with Eddie Murphy went on to become a culture-changing massive hit, grossing more than Ghostbusters and Temple of Doom combined divided by 2. To become the biggest movie of the year and spawning multiple sequels, including one that potentially could win Movie of the Year 2024. Potentially. Taste buds, I ask you this. If this movie starred Sylvester Stallone, would it have been as forgotten as Cobra? Can a movie be great, but for mostly one reason, and that's its star?
And this is about Cobra.
Nope. Okay, Beverly Hills Cop, sorry.
Gotcha.
I think that his talent in this is incandescent. And again, he does it in an effortless way.
Greg.
But you're not getting just a comedy performance out of him in this. And what I expected was, I don't know, like I'm looking back through the lens of time and I'm looking past like the Crumps and the Flubbers and I'm expecting sort of just like this detached goofiness. But instead, Axel Foley has an extremely grounded, dry humor and pathos. You care about this dude so much and you can see him hiding all his pain and you're like, Axel, you have to acknowledge what you're going through emotionally. You have to take that journey, Axel.
Well, and I the movie, like, it started, and we were at the point where he's checking into the Beverly Hills Hotel, and he starts going on his, they're like, I'm so sorry, we're booked out, like, there's no room here, and he starts going on this tirade about how he's a writer from Rolling Stone, he's interviewing Michael Jackson, and, like, you can feel it building toward what it's going to, like, culminate into, which is that I guess black men are not allowed in this hotel. And just as he's riffing and riffing and riffing, I'm just laughing. And Moa is in there. She's like, what's happening? It's so funny. And it's like, I can't just say Eddie Murphy being Eddie Murphy because that doesn't tell you anything. But it's that, like, in that moment when he's in, like you said, the part where he, we touched on it earlier, where he's trying to sell the lie to, like, the chief of police to get his, like, 2 other new cop buddies, like, out of trouble. Just those parts where you can just feel him building on his own instincts to riff into like a whole magical story, as opposed to what I have to imagine are words on the page that do not seem so compelling when you just read them. He's just like, there's a reason why this guy had, like, the universe kind of reorganize around him for a period of his star being at its absolute zenith. And he was just so charismatic. You can't be just funny and be that. You have to have a vulnerability to you. You have to have a backbone to the performance. Like, there are plenty of people who are just funny, but then you don't rise to the level of gargantuan stardom like Eddie Murphy did. So he really is just an unbelievably versatile guy. It's just crazy.
I know for people like in their 20s or younger that are listening to this, we might as well be talking about Fatty Arbuckle. Like, that's what it sounds like. But
yeah, 100% true.
I have the best example of this about what he does, so I'm just going to give myself a pre-point for that because it's perfect. He is walking up. He tells Jennifer to go home, and he's walking Jenny to walk into. He's walking in this warehouse, and he's going to get caught. We know it. He knows it, and we don't know what he's going to do. And it feels like Axel doesn't know what he's going to do, and Eddie doesn't know what he's going to do. But he trusts that when the time comes, he's going to make something up, and it's going to fucking win everybody over. Even if you're totally against him, you're now with him. You know, like, there's no... Axel doesn't have that much of an arc in this movie. It's more out of... It's more like fish out of water changes water than the fish changes. But watching Taggart and Rosecrans...
Billy.
Billy. Yeah, Taggart is a last name cop and Billy is a first name cop.
But it is Billy Rosewood.
Billy, like, they have the arc that we all did of watching Eddie Murphy just worm his way into your heart.
And even the like the captain, because when we just
a true surprise from an actor that is like a human spoiler. Like, you see him and you see the villain from Total Recall and you're like, he's definitely gonna sell Eddie's ass out on this, but like, he wins that guy over.
And the way that the movie proves to you that he's won him over is he sort of reprises Axel Foley's like bullshit speech, and when he's done, Taggart backs it, and that's enough to put the whole thing to bed. So in a way, like, Axel Foley trains these straight-laced Beverly Hills cops how to like lie, cheat, steal, but it's like we understand that that's a good thing because it comes from the warm performance of Eddie Murphy, who we would trust with basically anything.
Yeah, David Denby famously wrote about this movie. It's about a black cop teaching white cops to not go by the book, having no idea what that would do to the black community forever after that, and never addressing it.
But another thing is, I forgot how handsome Eddie Murphy is. What a handsome gentleman.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
I have to say, that's not a small part of this movie, especially in the scenes where he's talking to Jenny. I don't think there's a lot for Jenny to do. Jenny's almost in the movie to prove that they could put a girl in the movie.
Dare us. Sure, yeah. We can do it.
But the two of them have boffo chemistry that like makes the viewer ask, like, wait, so they're just friends? And
in a shocking twist, they do not hook up.
Which I love. I
love that about this movie, that they just have great chemistry, and like, it seems like maybe something happened back then, but they know they are just so much better as pals, and so they just have like this crackling energy between the two of them.
It really does, though. It exists. I mean, it jumps off the screen.
It's awesome that you watched it the way you did, Jordan, because we have a Billy and a Taggart in Your Wife and Your Roommate. Did they slowly warm up to Axel and Eddie like the cops did in this movie?
It was a very, like, there was a great moment where, like, I forget the exact line he said, but our other roommate went, "That sounds like donkey." And as soon as there was that, like, catch point, it was like, oh, yeah. Yeah,
oh
that guy. I love him.
I like this guy.
That sounds like donkey.
Oh, man.
I'm shocked. I always, in my mind, basically put 48 Hours and Beverly Hills Cop on the same sort of level. Like, these are
I think it's a double feature. I absolutely, it's a double feature.
Having done both movies now for the show, I do think Beverly Hills Cop is a lot better. It's a lot slicker. It's a lot, more Hollywood, but also Eddie's growth. I mean, it's 2 years, I think, right? Difference. But he goes from, like, just a wild kid who's, like, saying whatever he wants in the movie and as, like, the character and the actor to having so much more restraint. And he feels, at some points, 20 years older than the character from 48 Hours in this movie. Like,
that's so interesting.
What he is, like, how he's able to handle some of these scenes and do a lot with just his face. I don't think we saw anything like that in 48 Hours.
I also think that you see them utilizing his skills to become different characters without falling into the trap of actualizing that, right? Like, it's so nice to get to see different facets of him, because he really, like, when he constructs these other identities to get past, like, people, like to get past guards and stuff, they're very three-dimensional, like, realized characters. They have their own mannerisms, they have their own sayings, they have their own, like, posture, they move their mouth differently, they have different accents, and, like, they sort of come alive a little bit. But don't be so literal about that, movies. Don't make the mistake of then being like, well, you know, we could just have him be half the cast, because it's so much more delightful to see him sort of snap in and out of that, really.
I mean, a testament to that he would go on to make movies in which he played half the cast.
Yes. And we're about 4 years away from that at this point. Like, Coming to America was the big, I think, and the most successful of him doing it. And then it was different levels of success after that, I would say. Another scene that I want to bring up, though, is when he's getting reamed by Ronnie Cox. This is a scene where he's letting Ronnie Cox have the moment. That's the thing, is that he's not, like, he doesn't have to always be a screaming Eddie Murphy stereotype, and does this incredible mixture of, like, I'm going to get through this. I know I will. I just need to bite my tongue now. But also like a child, like a scolded child coming out of the face of this 34-year-old, 22-year-old person. I just, like, the things that he's doing here. We can all quote the lines. I love the lines, but, like, the things he's doing here in this performance baffled me on this watch.
Yeah, he's doing a lot more than just giving the lines. You know, like, he adds so much to everything, and I think in a way the movie undersells some of his funny twists to what they're saying.
Well, and I think where you see that in, like, a good foil for that is, I want to say this without, like, condemning the thing I'm going to compare it to, because it's just something different. But, like, this isn't a conversation you have about, like, somebody who clearly, like, walked in the footsteps of Eddie Murphy. This isn't the kind of, in a similar construct with the buddy cop comedy, that you say about, like, Chris Tucker in the Rush Hour movies. Like, this, like, you don't, like, he's fun, he's bombastic, he's Chris Tucker, he's, forever to me, he's Ruby Rhod.
Oh, yeah.
And to me,
100%.
like, Ruby Rhod is just, like, who he is at his core as a screen presence, but you're not, like, watching Rush Hour being like, God, the pathos of Chris Tucker in there. And again, just a different movie. That doesn't make it better or worse, but I think it speaks to that you can be phenomenally successful and do what you see in Rush Hour. That's a whole franchise. It's phenomenally successful. Jackie Chan rules. But, like, to watch something that probably could have been as successful and as famous, because the comedy would have, like, the comedy of Eddie Murphy would have sufficed to carry, like, Beverly Hills Cop into becoming what it did become culturally, and yet the depth and like the little touches of what Eddie Murphy has as just a true star and performer, you see that and you're like, I mean, that's why there's a podcast episode about it later that's not just like, we all laughed at that, but it's like, man, how did this really just dig into our skin the way that it did?
I mean, the other person that I always think about with this stuff, and this will, like, directly age me, you can pick out my exact age when I talk about this, is Jim Carrey, who had a very specific thing, and then wanted to grow out of that, but with very few exceptions, it seemed like that he spent his career either saying full-blown talking out of my ass comedy or full-blown pathos with nothing. And I would say Eternal Sunshine and Truman are probably the two.
I was going to say, and probably the two most sort of, like, his strongest legacy projects are the two examples, the ones where he brought that to the table in the intersection, which is Eternal Sunshine and The Truman Show.
Right. And then for every one of there's 10 Majestics or the number 23 or
number 23.
I can't even think of, like, his most recent, like, Fun with Dick and Jane, where, like, he just couldn't combine the two. He had to choose a path, you know? And Eddie Murphy, we're gonna go through his career pretty soon. He may also struggle with that, but in this movie, he has a perfect classic, I think.
Did Eddie Murphy?
It feels like he arrived at the exact right time as well for, like, what the Moors. I mean, he was a defining presence of what the Moors of comedy of the day were, and so I feel like at a certain point you wrapped a movie around Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy did not wrap himself around the project to be what it needed. You wanted him for his exact persona, his exact sense of humor, and his stylings. And I think Jim Carrey is a really good parallel to that as well. And honestly, it's why I was so happy to see him in the Sonic and the Hedgehog movies, because those weren't confused performances. That's just like talking out of his ass comedy.
Jordan.
And he's hilarious again. And I missed that Jim Carrey. But I think that's why, like, when you see a star that is so defining of their time, to go back and watch the movies of that time that aligned with the peak of their star power, it's such a magical marriage when you see, like, the mirror of society in something by understanding how they valued the people who were most present at the time. And you look at that and you're like, I mean, this is a window into you look at a movie from 1984 and you look at Eddie Murphy from this movie from 1984, the highest grossing movie, and you're like, wow, this is who we were. Like, this is what we thought was funny. This was the bit of the day, like the buddy cop in LA, like action comedy, perhaps one of my favorite genres in all of cinema.
Right.
I have definitely come around to the John Waters school of film, which is that with very rare exception, there's actually not such a thing as a bad movie, because if nothing else,
I pretty much endorse that.
You're getting like these exterior shots, 1983 Los Angeles, and you're seeing the real people of Los Angeles, and you're seeing him walk around. And the older and crustier I get, the more I'm like, that's valuable for every time. Show me 1935 folks walking around going about their day. Show me you know, like I want to see that, and that's valuable from movies. And the way movies capture social conventions and social ideas, it's interesting to see them crystallize like that. And this movie, on top of being interesting, also has those things, because it's just cool to see Beverly Hills 1984, and this is the weirdos that drove around there.
And that's why movie of the year 2024 is so much less interesting to me than 1984, is because we've talked about this all season long about, if you go back to 1984, the lower the budget, the more real what you're seeing is. Like, they didn't bring in exterior stuff to then replace the exterior stuff. They have to shoot the exterior stuff, and we've seen that all season. But also, whatever your thoughts on politics, or your thoughts on the social mores or whatever are from the director, the writer, the actor, you don't know that you're including them, but you fucking are.
Yeah,
and we're watching them right now.
You can't keep society from sinking into everything that you're doing, right? Like, you try to like, oh, this is going to be my vision, and I'm just going to speak for myself. But like, you are a lens through which culture like pours its light, and you can maybe sort of focus yourself a little bit, but a whole bunch of other stuff gets in there, and that stuff is like the site of really interesting extra meaning that you can sort of like, enjoy on a different level than just Eddie Murphy's laugh.
Well, and this movie was so big at a time when it was the monoculture. Like, it was like not a fractured like lens of an infinitely kaleidoscopic reservoir of culture that can be like personally delivered to you through with algorithmic precision. This was monoculture. So when a movie was this big, it means fucking everyone knew what you were talking about. It means everybody knew. Like, it means everybody heard the Eddie laugh and had a feeling about it.
Yeah.
And probably in a grocery store, you could find a lot of people, like, within the month this came out, to have a conversation with them about, like, oh, Beverly Hills Cop, I love Axel Foley. That's insane. Like, to know, like, how big of a star he was, and at that time, what that meant was how many people that was touching in unison. Like, breaks my brain to think about that now.
It will never happen again. Let's just be honest.
Yeah,
no, it can't. It never can.
Because now your nephew will tell you about a streamer who's like the most important, biggest streamer in the world, and you're like, I don't recognize that name. Like, I've never heard who you're talking about before.
Well, and
he's got 50 million fans.
is in huge. He's in fucking Dune. My mom doesn't know. If she knows who Timothée Chalamet is, she doesn't know how famous he is.
Right.
She doesn't know people are obsessed with him, that he's like an internet boyfriend. Like, she doesn't know that part about him. She just might know she's seen the poster for that cool sci-fi movie that's coming up. So, like, even knowing of the same people, you can be completely unaware of the scope of their impact and touch on people. That actor Paul Mescal, I feel like he's basically been cast in half the movies that are in development right now.
He's our generation's Jeremy Renner.
I realized I had not heard Paul Mescal's voice before the Gladiator 2 trailer, and I was like, I am an in touch with it person.
Yeah,
I'm
right?
absolutely familiar with Paul Mescal. And I was like, I had thought about it before, but it really drove it home for me when I watched that trailer. Like, I have not seen a fucking thing this man has done, and he is a bit of an it boy. He was nominated for an Academy Award. Like, ridiculous. And that's me even knowing who this guy is.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, if Paul Mescal is a hit, or is probably going to be the star of the year in Gladiator 2. You know,
Right.
Timothée Chalamet is a star because of Dune 2 this year.
Yeah.
Eddie Murphy took this thing, like a very basic title that had no franchise, no comic books based on it. It's not based on a video game, and made it the biggest thing of the year because it was him. I love this movie. I think that this is an incredible movie. The plot, the script before Eddie Murphy got a hold of it is C+. It's like, you have seen this movie 1 billion times. It is him, him. You know what? We have to take a break from talking about Eddie Murphy, and we are going to talk about Eddie Murphy. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Yes.
It's time for the Eddie Murphy career retrospective. Before we start that, Greg, do you know the lyrics to the Beverly Hills theme song?
Beverly Hills Cop, Beverly Hills Cop, Axel Foley gonna find them drugs.
Classic. That's by
Con, Super News and Foam.
voiced by one of the whitest men you have ever seen.
Oh, is that
I do
true?
just want to, before we get in earnest into the next thing, I do just want to follow up on the one thing you said right at the end there was like that this is like an original, like the most nondescript title, and it still went off this huge. I just want to shout out to 1984 because I am looking at the total gross adjusted box office for 1984. Let's just look at the franchise seeding that happened in this year.
Yeah.
And this is in the top 10. Beverly Hills Cop, Ghostbusters, Gremlins, The Karate Kid, and Police Academy. Those 5 movies are in the top 10, which would all go on to become franchises.
What's crazy is that if those 5 movies came out in 2024, they would then become part of a shared universe, and we could see all of those characters together in the same movie.
It's not too late. And I mean, but they all now, how many of those franchises reach out to this very day that they're dropping movies this year?
This is a Cobra Kai poster. That's from a 1984 movie. There's a Cobra Kai poster in my office.
Wow.
Everybody can see that. That's in the studio audience, of course. Guys, we're going to walk through Eddie Murphy's career, and we're going to try to determine bracket style. It's an Eddie bracket. Eddie Bracken? Was that a movie star from the 40s? Doesn't matter.
Could be.
Why does that name sound familiar?
Could be.
We're going to try to determine what is the single most iconic role of Eddie Murphy's. It might even be Axel Foley. Let me ask you this before we start. Is it possible, we've done these career retrospectives for a lot of people, most recently Steve Martin a couple of weeks ago. Is it possible for an animated character to become somebody's most iconic?
I think I couldn't say no because I could not argue for you that Donkey should not be in that conversation. I couldn't.
Yeah.
Sitting there watching my roommate going, "Oh, that's Donkey. That sounds like Donkey." Like, holy shit.
And I have his 16 most iconic roles in this bracket. That's not his only one. There's another.
Another.
Let's get it started.
There's another.
No, there is another.
The dragon from Mulan.
That's
Oh
it.
my
Yeah.
god, I loved the dragon in Mulan.
I mean, talk to the youth.
Mushu!
Yeah,
the
dude.
indestructible Mushu. One of my favorite parts of that movie.
So we've sort of switched this segment. If you listen to the All of Me episode, then you know that we're doing this differently now. We're going chronologically instead of by ranking. So we're going to start fresh out of SNL, and we're going to pit Reggie Hammond from 48 Hours, not versus Axel Foley, but just before that, Billy Ray Valentine from Trading Places. What are our initial thoughts?
That this is tough.
I have and I can't, God, maybe, I feel like this is like household bias on this one. Like, I feel inclined to say 48 Hours from a broader cultural standpoint, but in my house, we loved Trading Places. That was one of my mom's favorite movies. So for me, like, to me, I have to, like, think about the details of 48 Hours, but I remember Billy Ray Valentine and jump-hugging Dan Aykroyd and breast and show Jamie Lee Curtis. We would be remiss.
Jordan.
That's Billy Ray Valentine is a huge one. Oh, I don't know if I'm speaking for me or if I'm speaking for actual other people by saying Billy Ray.
I have a new podcast idea. Have guests and say, what were your mom's favorite movies? Because you've seen them a billion times, and they're always wild. It's always like, oh, my 2 favorite movies are for sure Amadeus and Lambada, the Forbidden Dance.
If you have this, please have me on to talk about Captain Ron. Please have me on to talk about Captain Ron.
I have a little bit of the same thing. In my childhood, I never saw 48 Hours. And Trading Places, was like big in my family too. But we saw 48 Hours just a couple of years ago. And I didn't love everything about that movie. I loved everything about what he did. And I said many of the same things. I'm saying, maybe I shouldn't say that about myself, but I'm saying a lot of the same things tonight that I said on the show for 48 Hours. I was just like, I remember being blown away by how handsome and talented he was in that movie as well. So
I'm trying to think of a scene in Trading Places that is as Eddie iconic as him getting the badge in the shit kicker hillbilly bar and saying there's a new sheriff in town.
Yeah.
Is there anything in Trading Places like that?
I think of I in my head, like, more often than I would even. I'm surprised at how often I think of, like, looking good, Billy, feeling good, Lewis. Is that just we recorded it from HBO onto a VHS tape
of course,
and watched that.
Yes.
But what
look
you're
who
saying
had
about the
HBO as a kid.
Oh yeah. That's where we recorded Captain Ron from HBO.
Yeah, but that's what you did. If you had HBO in your house, you were like constantly recording movies nonstop.
We had a bigger recorded tape library than we did, and we had a lot of movies than we did movies that we bought for sure.
Oh yeah, I mean that's every person our age is like. It's like
the VHS with 3 movies on it.
Your 7 that you got from Kmart, and then your 100 that you recorded off TV.
Kids, we recorded them off of like a network television, so they'd have commercials. So you would watch commercials for like 10 years,
which was terrible. But I would kill to watch.
Yeah,
those
but now you're nostalgic
yeah.
for them, right? I want to see.
And occasionally that produces iconography, like the VH1 made-for-TV cut of Showgirls. Like
yes!
That's its own. I remember watching that before I watched the original Showgirls and seeing like poorly put on digital bras that jiggled as the Showgirls danced. Boy, seeing the real version of that movie after was a real eye-opener. There's no way the pool scene is in the VH1 one. I feel like I had to have watched that later when I watched the actual VHS in my house.
That pool scene, that is like the very edge of parody. I'm not sure if that movie is a comedy intentionally or what, but man, is he flopping her around in that pool hardcore.
Greg, we cannot get Jordan started on Showgirls. We cannot. Greg, I'm going to have to go for a vote. Is it 48 Hours or Trading Places?
For me, it's 48 Hours.
Jordan?
I think sensibly I would have to say 48 Hours. As much as I would prefer for it to be Billy Ray Valentine, I think I do think that's more me personally talking, so I think I have to go 48 Hours.
All right, we're moving into he's now officially a star. 1984's Beverly Hills Cop. Heard of it? Versus, again, it was hard to come up with the 16 most iconic, but 1986 is Chandler Jarrell.
God!
The original Chandler.
I hope this lands in the top 16!
Greg, do you know?
I'm not sure that I do.
It's the Golden Child.
The Golden Child!
Oh, okay. Man,
this is actually, speaking of how this was the Eddie Murphy movie in my house. And Charles Dance insisting on saying Chandler Jarrell. And Eddie Murphy having to correct him over and over again. I don't know why you insisted on saying, my name is Gerald with a J.
But just the first name, the whole time. He's like, could I be any more Eddie Murphy?
Chandler Jarrell.
I liked that movie as a kid, but it's a little spooky, Ryan. So I did not go to that well quite as often because there was 1 or 2 parts that scared me.
Is it what happens in the movie, or is it his hat choices that are the spookiest?
Yeah.
He looks like a moron in that movie.
I mean, him in like that Tibetan cave, hopping across those wooden poles, having to balance the glass of water on his head, like, oh God, I love fantasy, sci-fi, that kind of stuff's always gonna win me over. But like, I don't think I could make an argument that Chandler Jarrell is the more. I hate that. I break my own heart saying it, but oh.
I mean, is there a song called Chandler J?
Yeah.
No, it's just Axel F. I do think that this is an interesting matchup, though, because he is the comeback kid. It's happened like maybe 7 times in my life where everybody was like, he's done, and then he comes back.
No one's coming back from Osmosis Jones.
And
No. I feel like I need to watch that again as an adult because it was so it was one of those ones where it was like it's for kids. Like my parents thought it was for kids too. So when we watched it, it's very much a movie for grown-ups. We were so destabilized. Like the exploding zit in that movie is still one of the worst fucking things I've ever seen in my life.
I've never seen it, but I feel like it just has entered me through culture.
A zit in the dead middle of like right between the brows of Bill Murray, like insides are like rotting Bill Murray, like his system is revolting, and it like you watch it rumble like it's a geological event, and it explodes like a volcano out of his forehead, and the top of the whitehead shoots across the space between him and his conversation partner, and it lands on her lip.
Oh no! Wow, that really just got worse and worse.
I heard that
horrible.
I heard that Bill Murray popped a zit on somebody's fries and then told that person, no one's ever going to believe this happened.
And yet we all do, Bill.
All right, Axel Foley moves on. Chandler, thanks for making this show. Your next one is... Okay, we're coming back from the Golden Child disaster with Prince Akeem from Coming to America. And when I say Prince Akeem, this is hard to do with Eddie because we're doing most iconic roles, but we're including all 7 roles in Coming to America.
Oh, wow, gosh.
The next one, and I'm going to assume, Jordan, you have more familiarity with the next one than Greg does just because you have reviewed it recently or discussed it, is Quick from Harlem Nights. Is this a slam dunk?
It feels like, it feels like it's got to be Akeem. Like, it's Coming to America. Like, wow.
Yeah.
And a movie that is oddly connected to Trading Places, right?
Yes, it's in the same universe.
The same guys pop up
again.
The Waldorf and Statler of that movie.
They're like living in the literal garbage, and they get a bag full of money, and they're like, we're back in the game.
I haven't seen it since I was a kid. Is Harlem Nights good?
It's weird. I think it's worth it for, like, it being... It's like, what is the Sylvester Stallone one where he plays, like, the rich guy who, like, it all takes place in one house, like it's Clue?
Oscar.
It's like Eddie Murphy's Oscar. Like this zany. Is it a comedy? Is it a drama? It's kind of it's a lot to wrap your brain around. It's fine. It's fine. I appreciate how ambitious it was to make a gangster period piece.
Okay, so we're going to move into the 90s deeper. I think that this is 2 movies that, like, one's very important for black people, one's very important for white people, so we'll see what you guys pick.
Oh, shit.
1992, Marcus Graham in Boomerang versus 1996's Sherman and the Clumps.
Oh, my God.
I would... this isn't a where it feels like the Nutty Professor just got so big, and it has one of Janet Jackson's best songs of all time. In the theme song for that movie. God, that song was so good. But like,
how'd it go? It was like, hey, you're the Nutty Professor.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Basically that.
It was a very long expository song that went through all the different aspects of the movie.
And
Janet
now you're Buddy
Jackson.
Exterior Science Lab.
Nutty Professor song. Doesn't really matter. Oh, God, doesn't really matter. What a goddamn bop.
Nutty Professor had... These are very important movies because Nutty Professor had, to me, and my childhood, because Nutty Professor had Janet Jackson, and Boomerang had very young Halle Berry, and...
right.
Shit, what's her name? Vanessa Williams? No, Robin Givens. Robin Givens, my God,
Robin Givens,
guys.
you're right. Boomerang was such a... That was a movie where I think there's a sex scene in that movie that was like, I think that was like the first sex scene I ever saw. Like that I remember ever seeing on, and I was like, I remember being like upset. Like, she's like, I don't know about this. Like, and so like Boomerang has made a real indelible impact on me. Like, it's a formative movie for me, but I feel like I have to regrettably say it's Professor Clump.
I have a similar story with Boomerang. I was so shocked by the sex scene that I took it out and I threw it.
Yeah, what happened, Greg?
But you'll never, Ryan. But it sort of curved and came back around. Right back into the VCR.
Right back at you?
Yeah.
Why did they not make the VHS or DVD case like that? Like, what a missed opportunity.
I remember being a kid and watching Boomerang and being like, this is adult in the sense that I don't understand what's going on. These relationships are like way too complicated for me to really parse, and I don't know exactly what they're talking about all the time, and I'm like sort of not paying attention to what's going on.
But Eddie Murphy's in it, so
yeah, exactly. So I was like, okay, here we go, and then right away I was like, oh wow, this is like measured and thoughtful, I think, and about experiences that I don't really have any contact with.
Yeah,
so I guess I'm gonna grab my action figures and just like have them wrestle.
I want to say too that
have them wrestle.
Boomerang's song too, I believe, was End of the Road, and that started a lifetime love affair of mine with Boyz II Men. So
oh wow, yeah, that's a good one.
Do you think the kids know about Boyz II Men?
Just men, I think.
Just the men.
Yeah. Greg, what do you think?
Yeah, I wonder if I started singing "End of the Road" in the house right now, if they would be like, no, if they would be like, where'd you hear that?
Door.
If you did,
is that a TikTok sound?
If you did, they might say, "What is this, Ryan's house?" Because it happens here a lot. Greg, Professor Klump or Marcus Graham from Boomerang?
I'm gonna go with Boomerang. If you said which of those movies you want to watch right now, I'd be much more interested to see.
Oh,
Boomerang.
I absolutely would prefer to watch Boomerang.
Jordan gets the point. It's obviously Professor Klump. All right, 1998 gives us two movies. We can make this a short one. Dr. Dolittle, like as soon as he got this Klump crowd, fucked it up with Dr. Dolittle.
Do they keep just making fucking movies about Dr. Dolittle? Like they don't want it.
No one cares.
We don't want it. It's like a career ender. Stop it.
That's really true.
Hundreds of millions of dollars into it, and then nobody's gonna care. Stop with the Dr. Dolittle stuff.
Intersectionally, we don't want Dr. Dolittle.
Nobody wants it. There's no audience for it.
Yeah, there's not a community out there.
Every 20 years, Hollywood's like, I think we could do it, guys. He'll be talking to animals. People love that.
Why would I want Dr. Dolittle when I can just go back and watch The Incredible Mr. Limpet again? Like, that's my guy talking to the animals.
We should get powerful in Hollywood, and then first.
Powerful.
Definitely.
And then if there's an actor we don't like, we just suggest Dr. Dolittle remake. Timothée Chalamet, boom, he's gone forever. Like, as soon as he makes it.
It must be that it's in public domain, right?
I don't know.
Because that, like, any pitch that comes with, and we don't have to pay anybody for it. It's like, oh, okay, I kind of like this idea.
It derailed the careers of Rex Harrison, Eddie Murphy, and Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, right? Yeah, like, I mean, it's like, isn't it like canonically the 1971 movie that everyone was like, oh,
yeah,
no,
Hollywood,
movies,
what the fuck
happened? Movies aren't this anymore. Wow, this is so sad.
It's Dr. Dolittle's going up against an animal of sorts, I guess. It's Mushu, who can talk to the humans.
Wow, okay, slam dunk, Ryan.
Is there
slam dunk for Mushu?
Mushu.
This is the movie. This is the fucking movie that made a man out of me, Ryan. By the time I was done, I was like, you know what, dude? Yeah, I'm a man.
And that song really gained us a lot of credibility in the karaoke league that I was in San Francisco. That really was what got the league to notice the power of Team Mike Will Made It. Was me and my teammate Bo doing "I'll Make a Man Out of You."
That is awesome. That is a karaoke killer.
A song.
It is so good. It is like it's
the
all like in a middle register
up, right?
and really easy to understand.
Yeah.
And if you're in a room of anything close to millennials and Gen Xers, it just goes huge.
I mean, everybody in the room gets to sing "Be a Man."
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
Like, originally sung in the movie, this Asian character that sang the song was played by Donny Osmond.
Donny Osmond,
the Oz as we call him. Yeah, I think that this was a little bit dangerous because how could you not compare Mushu, when he first got cast, to Robin Williams' Genie? And I think that he did amazing with it anyway. So
he found a very
and Dr.
different
Dolittle
space,
got
right?
a sequel. The first Dr. Dolittle was like very successful. We had Dr. Dolittle on tape. Like I really like that movie, but like Mushu.
All right, let's go into. It's getting weirder here. We're gonna go to 1999, and I'm gonna say Rayford Gibson.
Oh, is that Life?
It's Life.
Holy
Life. Okay.
Eddie Murphy and Martin Lawrence.
Yeah. Cornbread.
He's going up against two characters, the Ramsey brothers. That's Bowfinger.
Oh God, what a fucking showdown this is.
Bowfinger. That's another one that I feel like I've never given much of a serious watch to.
It's so good. And
I'm gonna go. I'm going Bowfinger. I feel like there's at least a weirdness that sets that movie apart, and it's also a Steve Martin movie. Versus, like, I don't think we're talking about Life.
No, Life is a weird, kind of good, but really just weird. Like, what a swing, and not a miss, but like home run swing. Ran out of single. I don't know.
I would say it has 3 good scenes, but then it has like 4 bad scenes.
So that does break the Howard Hawks rule.
Yeah, its numbers are way off. But there's like at least 3 scenes where you're like, you know what, this is good. I'm glad I'm doing this. But then I think that there's a lot of like groaners throughout it.
But we're at this time right now where Eddie Murphy's like, "What's the script? Don't care. Put me in makeup."
Right. Yeah.
Like,
that is definitely an era that comes upon us.
Bowfinger takes it down. All right, guys, here we go. I don't know. 2001.
I love that. Yeah, I didn't know he was in that. But
he plays Hal. Hal's like, we have Donkey from Shrek. 2006, we have his only Oscar nomination. That's James Thunder Early from Dreamgirls. We're talking iconic here. I fucking hate Shrek, but I don't know what to do.
It's Donkey.
It's got to be Donkey.
It's Donkey.
How could we look anybody like 25 and under in the face? We didn't do this.
Yeah.
Dreamgirls is really good. Well, his performance is really good. All right,
incredible.
I don't doubt it because he's amazing.
Our final matchup. These are getting way farther apart. I don't know if you guys noticed. If we're now in 2007. Let me do the 2019 one first. It's Rudy Ray Moore from Dolomite Is My Name.
Oh, damn. Wasn't that really good?
Yeah.
And like Oscar hopeful.
Yeah.
He, of course, I think he thought that he got screwed on it. But, yeah, did not.
The Oscars wouldn't. But, Ryan, would they do that?
Remember,
No.
we're talking iconic here, and it's going up against 2007's Norbit.
Oh, dude.
I feel like Norbit has this edge of being almost like memeably bad.
Yeah.
But Rudy, Dolomite Is My Name is a great movie.
There's these I think there's these cultural milestones where like it was wrong to do something forever.
Yeah.
But then something comes out and it's like the final thing. And I think like Fat Phobia, Norbit was like no one please stop. You know, like we dealt with it with the clumps because it wasn't pointing fingers and making fun.
Yeah.
You know, but Norbit, that was the thing where society was like, all right, we are done with this shit.
Or that Jack Black movie, Shallow Hal.
Shallow
I
Hal.
feel like by the time Shallow Hal was gone, we were just like, you know what? This is awful. Like, can we stop doing this now?
That's a movie where, like, I feel like that one had something where it went around, like, on TikTok or something last year where it was like, hey, you guys know this movie Shallow Hal exists? It's like, oh, no.
Yeah. Oh, that should have stayed dead.
Yeah.
I had always hated it, Gen Z. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm down with. I do think Norbit is more iconic, but I'm down with just protesting Norbit. And
I think Norbit would have the higher recognition, but I think we just vote Norbit off the island.
It sounds like an Australian person talking about a satellite.
Norbit.
Norbit.
It's in Norbit.
It's in or okay. We're in speed round now. Let's pick this. I want your immediate gut reaction. Greg, Reggie Hammond from 48 Hours, or Axel Foley from Beverly Hills Cop?
Axel Foley.
Yeah, Axel Foley, I think as well. Wow, that's hard though, Ryan.
Yeah.
It didn't feel good to do.
That might have been the championship right there.
Yeah, I think that was.
Coming to America or The Nutty Professor?
Coming to America.
Coming to America.
Agreed. Doesn't matter if I agree, but I do. Mushu versus the Ramsey brothers from Bowfinger?
Mushu.
Disagree.
Yeah, but we're trying to get that SEO, Ryan. This is what kids want to hear. You're so right in your opinions, younger generation. Sorry.
I think Bowfinger is a deep cut, and Mulan is not.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Yeah, I mean, it's iconic, right? That's what we're doing. Iconography.
I mean,
but for Mushu, you don't have Donkey.
That is true.
Oh wow. Yeah. Okay.
Mushu flew so Donkey could trot.
Does Donkey fly?
Trot right alongside you.
He becomes a dragon briefly, doesn't he?
Well, he fucks a dragon or gets fucked by a dragon, but also.
That's interesting.
When we first meet Donkey, he is flying because some wizard is like bringing him towards him. So.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Donkey.
Speaking of Donkey, it's Donkey versus Dolomite.
Donkey.
Oh man, yeah, it's just Donkey, right? Like that's so big.
Yeah.
Axel Foley versus Prince Akeem from Coming to America.
Axel Foley, but
Axel Foley. I can say that confidently. Highest grossing movie of 1984.
And Mushu versus Donkey.
Whoa.
That is brutal, but like we are in a year where Shrek 4 has been announced and and Axel F. Beverly Hills Cop 4 just came out.
Like, there was a Mulan remake a couple years ago, and they were like, "Oh, we don't need that dragon." Like,
didn't they also not make it a musical?
Yeah,
no, it was just like a wuxia combat film.
Very serious movie.
And then, like, the star came out in support of, like, the Chinese government over Hong Kong, and it was like, oh, wow, this is so messy.
Oh, man. Here's what you do. Just talk to young people about what their interests are.
Yeah.
I need you to do that less, though. So, are we going with Donkey?
Donkey.
Yeah.
Honestly, prefer Mushu, but I gotta go with Donkey.
Yeah, I think that is the
Donkey has,
that's
like,
the age of this
spin-off
podcast.
films.
Is that we prefer Mushu, but we know we're supposed to say Donkey.
And
Yeah.
the reason I love brackets is because we all knew it was coming down to this, so that was just a waste of time. It's Axel Foley versus Donkey.
I could see an argument for why it should be Donkey, but I think that's not really the perspective of this podcast. I think we bounced him up enough. I think when it comes down to it, Axel Foley is bigger than Beverly Hills Cop, and it's certainly more important to this podcast.
Well, my position is, I think the bigger character, I do think is Donkey, but not by like a mile and a half.
He's not even the star of those movies.
But he has Donkey's caroling Christmas-tacular. He has Shrek's thrilling tales. Like he is
How about
side
Axel
jobs.
Foley's Fall Festival? I'm reading these off a list. Ryan.
DreamWorks Shrek Swamp Story. Like there's so much Donkey out there but he's the bigger character, but Axel Foley is also gargantuan, and he has a higher Donkey didn't change anything.
Right.
But Axel Foley did.
Oh, hell
so
yeah.
I'm going to go with Axel.
Axel
For that
Foley.
reason, with the recognition of the continued impact and awareness of Donkey on a cross-generational audience.
Yeah.
Beverly Hills Cop was a pivot point in like the kind of movie that was and that got made.
And that raised like a lot of awareness about donkeys.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
People didn't know about donkeys. Once again, the Movie of the Year podcast is no, it is the kids that are wrong. Axel Foley is your most iconic Eddie Murphy role of all time. When we come back, let's talk more about Beverly Hills Cop, yeah? This movie is called Beverly Hills Cop, but the main cop comes from Detroit. But how did this mistake get past the studio execs? But no, seriously, since we get a lot of Detroit in this movie, it must play a large role. What does the film say about the Detroit versus Beverly Hills dynamic? And does it stick to that theme throughout? Greg and Jordan, I ask you this.
It seems like in Detroit, they play fast and loose with the rules.
Yeah.
Although the movie kind of disproves that
Great.
a little bit, because like he gets his ass completely chewed out.
Oh, his Detroit boss is a hard ass.
Yeah, that guy was super upset. But it seems like, and then Beverly Hills, the way the cops in Beverly Hills are depicted in this movie is very interesting to me.
Really fascinating.
Yeah, because it's like
We're rule followers in Beverly Hills.
They 100% always follow the rules, including like, hey, I just saw my officer assault you. Would you like to like fill out a complaint? And it's just like,
Greg.
in a modern context, that kind of like, and not even in a modern context, like we just saw movies from the 70s and they depict cops as one way, and then suddenly in the 80s it's like, actually I think cops are pretty cool.
Don't you think that this is, I mean, we've said this 1,000,000 times this season, but don't you think, again, this is a little bit of Reagan City on the Hill conservative
that's a fair
bullshit
point.
seeping in, and like, no, like it should either be full copaganda or mostly copaganda.
And it seems, if anything, the point of this movie is like, if the cops were always following rules, nothing would get done, everybody. And so we have to learn to apply the rules on a kind of like case-by-case basis, and then,
Great.
find some way to create justice, not by the letter of the law. Right, everybody?
I mean, Axel says, "I have a hunch" 4 times in this movie.
Yeah,
and the key is not to like use evidence to solve the crime. It's the key is to get Billy and then Taggart and then the bosses to go along with your hunch.
Well, and there's I feel like one of the most sort of like windows into the time, but also into the copaganda industrial complex that in any movie like this would become is
Jordan.
When the officer does punch, like Taggart punches him in the Beverly Hills office. And his superior comes in, is like, would you like to file a report against my officer?
Yeah.
And Axel tells him, like, where I come from, cops don't press charges against other cops.
Thin
and I
blue
was like,
line, baby.
There it fucking is. Like, it
Jordan.
that romanticized, like, rogue cop who's going to come in spite of the rules, which is a construct for a movie that I love. Like, you can see how like you can picture young people, maybe little boys, watching these movies, being like, "Yeah, I want to be like that when I grow up." And
to
this
do whatever
really
I
just,
want
like,
with no repercussions.
Yeah, this just like social reinforcement over and over again of like the coolest, toughest, most awesome character you saw in the movie said, "Cops don't file charges against other cops, and I want to become a cop, and I'm going to adhere to that code." And it's like, man, just this in repetition really does fuck up a lot of people with their relationship to power and responsibility, wanting to pursue a career in law enforcement.
I went through that phase in my life that we all go through, and we all come to it at different times in our lives, but we all have this period in our lives where, like, every day we watch 3 hours of Law and Order for like 3.5 years, and then suddenly we're just like, what am I doing? And then you just never watch it or think about it ever again. But we all have that period. And I remember sometimes on like Law and Order, there'd be episodes where the IA was coming in, the Internal Investigations Bureau, and or like part of
Internal
the
Affairs,
the narcs,
Internal Affairs.
the
There you go. And it was always like, fuck these guys, I hate these guys.
Yes.
And then now, like looking at cops the way we do and being like, wait a minute, aren't those the people representing my interests by trying to find the bad cops in the police force? And why
Internal Affairs
hate
was
those people?
always the bad guy. You were always supposed to feel a way about internal, like, fuck.
We're trying to bust
losers.
criminals, and you're trying to bust cops.
Yeah.
Before Law and Order was huge, like now I'm going way back, but I had family over and we were talking about my grandma and her favorite show. And my grandma, before she died, would watch 6 to 8 hours a day of a show that was just called Cops.
Yeah, Cops.
Oh, sure.
And it was on constantly.
Bad boys. What you gonna do?
And
what
it was
you
just
gonna do when they come for you?
All about how there's nothing keeping these psychopath meth heads from coming into our home except for these cops that we get to ride along with. You know, like it's all. And there was never. I mean, I don't know this for sure, but it doesn't seem like there was ever a episode that like questioned what the cop did.
Oh no. Because they got their access based on how they were going to cut the show, right? Like there's no way.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of these movies that feature cops, especially from the 80s, we have to imagine there are cops on set. They have like a police coordinator, like,
right?
So that
Yeah,
they
for
can,
sure.
Like, and the cops are like guarding them, and so every day they go to work and they interact very closely with the cops. This is the same thing with politicians, right? They are so deeply invested with the cops that you can't expect them to have the most skeptical attitudes because it's like Fight Club. They're the people that protect them while they sleep, and so they're like, you know what? I think we should let these guys kind of do what they want. Because they come around me with their guns all the time.
Well, if you have property, you want them to protect your property. If you don't, they're the villain. I want to talk about race, because this movie has actually gotten a lot of shit for not doing as much as it should have or could have, as far as talking about the blackness of Axel Foley or the blackness of Detroit coming into a very white place. Did that stand out to you guys, especially watching it in 2024, where it feels like these are the issues that need to be dealt with at all times?
It reminded me of Breakin' 2 in that it's like every single scene in this movie is about race. Every single scene.
Right.
Most of the lines are about race. And yet, except for one very brief moment, no one says anything about race. Eddie Murphy, in what I think is potentially, I don't know, but potentially an ad-lib, uses the N-word after a whole scene where he seems to be indicating that this hotel is not going to accept him because of his race, but without ever going and saying it. And I feel like that's what we did in the 80s. And by the time we got to the 90s, we were like then talking about how racism is bad. But in the 80s, we were like sort of alluding to race and then at the same time alluding to class and being like, we're not really going to say a bunch about either one of these things, but like they're kind of like a mixed bag. And here, anyway, you shouldn't judge people based on whether they're pores or whether they're a different race. But we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to engage with it. So just like if you want to make something of these like sort of like signifiers, you can do that. But we're not gonna. The movie's not gonna like press down that hard on these issues.
Which isn't that more fun to watch than a message movie?
Yeah,
like,
I
where
think there's
you
a lot
have to do
that.
the work.
Like here are the dots. You go ahead and connect them rather than like Green Book, which is like we colored this coloring book for you.
Well, and I think it's interesting to look at. Like, because you have, like, Eddie Murphy's boss is trying everything he can, like, back in Detroit, to keep him in line. Like, Jesus Christ. Like, this is a guy who's trying to run a department here. But, like, this we have Axel coming in being the rogue cop who's going to do it his way, and he's so charming and we love him, and he tells the white cops that back where I'm from, we don't press charges, and basically we throw the rule book out and we do what we need to do to get the job done. And we're given this repeated model of how white cops in white places with rich constituents, they follow the letter of the law, they go by the book, they know how to be straight and narrow. But then, you get into Beverly Hills Cop 2, and there's more of, a sort of white malevolence presence of, an institutional from, the inside of the law, but that's a different conversation.
Jordan.
But I think, too, that... So there's this, reinforcement that the lawlessness of Detroit, which is a black city, much than when you would say, when you think of Detroit, you think of Beverly Hills. I think there is an association between those two where you think of, Beverly Hills as sort of, epitome of rich whiteness. And I think, too, you look at this compared to other cop in LA movies at the time. And I'm talking about the Wesley Snipes buddy movie, Rising Sun, starring Sean Connery.
Michael
in
Crichton.
Which there was this weird thing we did at the time where you would put a non-white character partnered up with a white law enforcement officer who was a Japanophile, and that white officer would teach the actual officer of color about the rules and honor and code of this exotic culture that they shape their whole lives around. So you have Japanophile Sean Connery being the zen wizened figure alongside the more obstreperous Wesley Snipes, and then in Showdown in Little Tokyo, a movie I fucking love, you have Dolph Lundgren playing the Japanophile character where he's gonna teach Brandon Lee about the ways of martial arts nobility. And so you're just we loved to do this fucking weird backwards thing. I feel of almost white people being the smarter, more aware race of people,
and if they have to bring in other cultures, then
wily non-white cop partners that they needed to keep in line with rule books or honor codes or tradition or custom.
Yeah,
but it was the weirdest fucking dynamic that was just so normal, and we just accepted it then.
If we if we are going to bring in other cultures, we're not going to cast a Japanese guy with Wesley Snipes. We're going to have the white person be I know about whiteness and Japanese stuff at the same time. That's how awesome I am.
This will help answer the
and
question.
My house
the future
is gonna look like a traditional Japanese architecture, and I'm gonna burn incense and do prayers kinds of thing, and we're gonna have scenes dedicated, montage scenes to this guy following the way of old Japanese custom, and then Brandon Lee's gonna show up and be I don't even I'm only speak English and my parents are immigrants, but I just never learned, and it's this is fucking bizarre.
I'm so glad that now I can think of two examples off the top of my head. Jeremy Jam and from Parks and Rec, and one of the Robert Downey Jr. characters in The Sympathizer. This is now a joke. If you do this, you're now a fucking joke.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
It's played for laughs. But yeah, I'm proud to admit that I am not a blankophile of any country or culture, including my own. I think they're all whatever.
Well, especially with Japan, America fell in love with America's idea of Japan. in the
Yeah.
80s. And we never stopped really loving our version of Japan. And as much as Japan has tried to impress upon us who it really is, for the most part, except for maybe the younger generations that are actually into anime that does come from Japan, I guess.
Yeah.
So maybe that'll help out a little bit. But if you were an 80s kid, you loved what America had to say about Japan.
It's a very good distinction, yes.
And I think that another sort of maybe linked idea is we have to remember that the Detroit of 1984 was a place that was going through a tremendous amount of internal strife. It was falling apart basically and had been for decades. But then the auto industry absolutely cratered because of the strength of the Japanese auto industry and the reliability and better performance of their cars and affordability. But what that did to Detroit was basically a financial disaster. And I'll give you an odd example. In the game SimCity 2000, you can play a lot of scenarios that are disasters, earthquakes, fires, tornadoes. One of them is the financial disaster that befell Detroit in the 1980s. And so this is a place that they're still, Detroit's kind of on the come up. on a comeback, let's say. But
this is 40 years though. 40 years of a come up.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and
wasn't it like the major metropolitan area that experienced the most white flight in the era of like white flight, where white folks were fleeing cities for the suburbs.
It hollowed
and
out.
I think that like Detroit is one of the only like major American cities that has experienced like significant population decline year over year for years on end. Like.
And so that's part of the background that I think maybe we don't, it's not as easy to be in touch with in a modern way as just how desolate Detroit was, and then came off to the rest of the country at the time.
I mean, there was that story about Detroit in the news that you couldn't tell because like cougars were taking over abandoned homes, and if you told that story, everybody would be like, "Oh, 45-year-old wine-drinking women? I would love to move there."
Coming into your neighborhood, just squatting in the houses?
Yeah. Claiming territory for themselves.
Yeah, bring it over.
Well, once again, we solved all the issues of class and race. Congratulations.
And talked about cougars.
All three of you.
I do think, too, like, there is an interesting thing of... Like, I was... One of my favorite sort of, like, cop action movies of the 80s and 90s is A Low-Down Dirty Shame, starring Keenan Ivory Wayans. And I watched that with a couple of friends of mine who were native Angelenos, and neither of them is white. And we talked at the end of the movie about how they were like, it was so good to watch this movie and just feel like I was watching my LA, because my LA is not filled with white people. And so, like, they're like, yeah, it's the 90s, and, like, in some ways kind of like there are regressive jokes, but also it felt like it had an authenticity to them of the city that they grew up in, because theirs was not a city defined by the whiteness writing the scripts and signing the checks to make a movie, and having the Wayans brothers, one of which is featured in Beverly Hills Cop, like, be the entertainment kind of empire that they made themselves into around this era, like, Keenan Ivory Wayans being able to, like, get a movie like that made where you watched it and felt like, listen, there are cultural jokes here that are not mine to make, but they feel like because of their belonging to the communities making these movies, that's free reign for, like, I'm not going to sit here and tell black folks about jokes they can or cannot make with one another. And watching Beverly Hills Cop, like, there are elements of, like, and maybe this is, like, the elder millennial in me, the, like, regressive aspects of this movie I do really enjoy. Like, when he decides to, one of the characters he plays, Axel Foley, he comes in at one point and he's trying to, like, get to the big bad in this, like, members-only club, and he goes up to the maitre d' and he's like, hi, and he's putting on the gayest lilt imaginable, and he's like, my name's Ramon, and I met Mr. Maitland 2 weeks ago, and I just got tested, and like, talking about how he has herpes
simplex 10.
And
that's the highest level of herpes.
Yeah. And I was watching it being like, this gay joke is funny. Like, I'm a queer person, a married to a wife queer person. And I was like, these jokes are still funny. It's not the best, but it's like, when people...
He's done
it's
worse.
Not like comedy's dead, but it's like, sometimes regressive things are still pretty funny. And drag will prove that more than anything else.
It is better than some of the things in Raw. Low Down Dirty Shame, not the best buddy cop movie with a Wayans brother in it. At least not my favorite. Do you know what it is?
Can anyone say?
Yeah, Greg, go ahead.
Is it The Last Boy Scout?
It's The Last Boy Scout.
Oh, God, yeah, that's right.
Jordan, as somebody who actually...
Iconic intro to a movie, The Last Boy Scout.
Ain't it a bitch?
Wow.
I just love an intro that, like, really lets you know what kind of movie you're in for. Jordan, as somebody who actually lives in L.A. and not us who claim to but don't,
yeah.
Does Beverly Hills have a police force? I thought it was like Hollywood. I thought it was like the name of a neighborhood.
Yeah, no, that it does, because Beverly Hills is its own municipality, and I think that is the actual, because if you go to the Beverly Hills sort of municipal services area on, like, Rexford near Santa Monica, I think that's the actual police office. Like, the police department of Beverly Hills does look like a very opulent Spanish influence style building with that architect. That might have actually been the real police building in Beverly Hills.
And how do we know Jordan's from California? She started naming streets. She's going to name freeways in the next segment. We love LA.
And weirdly, that is also, like, that, I think that same quarter is where I realized only 2 years ago I was biking down Santa Monica and I was like, holy shit, that's the tent that they're setting up for the Vanity Fair Oscar party. Like, I always wondered where they had it. And it's just a fucking side street in Beverly Hills where they set up a big tent.
This is our
life.
life.
Go to a party in a tent.
Wow.
One of the few tents that's set up for people in Los Angeles. We're going to take the quickest of breaks, and when we come back, it's trivia time.
Trivia.
That's right, folks. It is trivia time. You two know the rules, but I'll explain it for the audience. I'm going to ask a question. Wait till the question's over, and when it's over, say your name if you know the answer. And honestly, for most of you, say your name when you don't know the answer. But this is all Beverly Hills Cop based. We're going to get to the bottom of this movie. Trivia number 1. What 1984 movie did Eddie Murphy back out of to do Beverly Hills Cop?
Greg.
Karate
Kid.
Incorrect. Jordan?
Oh, God, I don't know. I truly don't.
What 1984 movie has a role of a black man that's cut down like crazy?
Jordan.
Why is he only in half the movie when the 3 white guys that fight ghosts are in the entire movie?
Greg.
No, Greg, it's too late. It's Ghostbusters. Number 2, when casting the roles of Taggart and Billy, what were each pair of actors who auditioned told to act like?
Greg.
A
grumpy old man and an innocent little boy.
Incorrect. Jordan?
John Wayne and
Bruce Wayne.
John Wayne and child Bruce Wayne.
It's my favorite Wayne's Brothers movie. It's an old married couple.
Oh.
Okay, they did a good job then.
Eating red meat. Like, that was...
Yeah.
Number 3, name 3 comedians who did a gay-leaning voice to get laughs in the movie.
Greg.
Damn, Greg.
Eddie Murphy.
Uh-huh.
Damon Wayans.
Uh-huh.
And Bronson Pinchot.
That's... I'll take it.
Pinchot?
Pinchot?
I thought for sure he died.
No, Bronson is still out here.
He appears in the
fourth
movie
one.
in 2024, and I was like, oh my God, they must have filmed this before, and I was like, I should Google this.
I went...
Thank God you're still alive, friend. I like you a lot, so I'm glad you're still here.
I went to send Mike, who isn't here tonight, a scene from Beverly Hills Cop that I wanted him to watch because he didn't watch the movie this week. And instead, it was the exact same scene, but it was from Axel F. So I was expecting the actors from 1984, and it was from 2024, and I screamed. I just aged, guys. It's coming for all of us.
You can kind of tell he doesn't want to do the voice as much anymore. Like,
yeah.
He didn't quite want to do the accent as hard.
Number 4, this was the first of 7 Eddie Murphy movies to open at number 1 at the box office. Name the movie that broke the streak. I'll give you a hint. It was not in our 16-character bracket.
Greg.
Osmosis
Jones.
Incorrect. I don't think he was in that movie, guys.
Isn't he the voice of... No, that's Chris Rock.
It's Chris Rock.
Chris Rock is Osmosis
You
Jones.
fucking racist.
Well, I haven't seen the movie. I don't know. What is there? I almost asked you what movie I'm thinking.
It wasn't any...
It's 1992. I saw it in theaters because I was Eddie pilled for sure. It is The Distinguished Gentleman.
Oh, God, I loved that one. Thomas Jefferson.
Yep.
I loved that. That was where I first learned about government corruption.
Oh, yeah. No, it's a documentary, basically.
Yeah, I was like, holy shit, like, people can do these things.
Number 5, Axel F. was not originally the main theme of the movie, but was planned to be used once in what comedic scene?
The Beverly Hills Hotel scene?
It was originally called the Banana in the Exhaust theme.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Man, they got their money's worth out of that, though, by the end, though, right? They're like, you know what? Let's throw a little Axel F right here, dude. That sounds good.
Number 6, Martin Brest was escorted by police when filming the opening scenes throughout Detroit. When the cops thought it was too dangerous to film at a particular spot, what would the cops do?
Greg.
Start
busting heads.
Nope. Jordan?
Act like they were tourists?
Incorrect. The answer is not escort him.
Oh,
they would say you're on your own, buddy.
Dude, the number 1 rule for cops.
Wow.
Don't put yourself in danger.
Stop doing your job.
Number 7, what did the filmmakers use to make the sound effects for the rod that connected the tires on Eddie Murphy's car? Jordan?
A wrench banging on a pipe?
Greg.
Incorrect. Jordan, Greg?
Axel Foley?
It was Axel Foley.
Wow, look at that.
The next few may be like that, Jordan.
Don't warn people about trivia. Eddie Murphy dropped out of Ghostbusters when Sylvester Stallone dropped out of Beverly Hills Cop. What would Sylvester Stallone sound like as a Ghostbuster?
Greg? Oh, you guys, let's go.
Pretty good. Jordan, what do you got?
I'm going to defer to Greg on that one. My voice can't hit an octave such that I could replicate a Sly.
It is my firm belief that he has never said an actual word.
The correct answer is, when you see a ghost, you cradle the balls and touch the shaft. Number 9, the Axel F theme was done with 3 synthesizers. Name them.
Greg.
Yes.
Mo, Curly, and Larry.
Incorrect,
Jordan.
Moog, and Moog.
The answer is a Roland Jupiter 8, a Roland JX3P, and a Yamaha DX7. This is not going well for you guys.
It was the DX. You're sure it was the DX7?
Yeah, but
you're sure on that.
Okay, yeah. I just wanted to make sure.
What was the original name for the sequel for Beverly Hills Cop?
Greg.
Beverly
Hills Cops.
Incorrect, Jordan.
That's the best way to do a sequel. Just throw an S on that bad boy.
So it is Beverly Hills Cop 2. Yeah, I'm terrible at fastest finger.
Greg's terrible at answering questions, so you're always going to get an opportunity.
Beverly Hills Copped.
Good guess. The answer is Beverly Hills Cop 2. They just went with that.
Okay. We weren't
11.
as cute back then. We just gave things numbers.
They were just excited to get another movie out. Money, please.
Jordan, here we go. Ring in fast. What was the name of the main character in the Beverly Hills Cop reboot that takes place at a hockey rink?
Greg.
Yeah.
Beverly Chills?
The name of the main character was Axel Foley, guys.
Axel
Foley. What was the name of the main character in the Beverly Hills Cop reboot that partners him with Dr. Maura Isles?
Greg.
That's incorrect. Jordan, you got anything?
No, I got nothing.
Axel
I'm a spectator
Rizzoli.
at this point.
It's Rizzoli and Isles. What was the name of the main?
Jesus.
What was the name of the main character in the Beverly Hills Cop reboot that aired on Disney Junior from 1996 to 2004? Wrong crowd for this stuff. It's Axel Polioli. What was the name of the main character in the Beverly Hills Cop reboot that starred this husband of Kristen Bell? No. It's Daxel Foley, guys. What was the name of the main character in the Beverly Hills Cop reboot that said to the main character, begging you not to take their man?
I'm sorry, say that again.
What was the name of the main character in the Beverly Hills Cop reboot?
Jaxel Foley?
No, Greg.
Axel Jolene?
Axel Foley. I'll give it to you, Greg.
Wow.
Greg. What was the name of the main character in the Beverly Hills Cop reboot that starred a young horse?
You say a young horse?
A young horse.
Oh, Greg.
Axel
Foley?
Axel Foley.
Oh, nice.
Number 17. Speaking of young horses, what do you call a horse that comes out after dark?
Greg.
A
nightmare.
A nightmare. Speaking of a nightmare, what disease are horses most scared of getting?
Greg. Hoof and mouth disease.
No, that's
what the only thing I was thinking. I was like, it can't be so obvious.
It's hay fever. Number 19. What kind of bread does a horse eat? Time's up. That's a thoroughbred. And finally, number 20. What movie did execs commit to a sequel to after the first private screening long before the movie came out?
Greg. Beverly Hills Cop?
It's Beverly Hills Cop, yes. All of the trivia was about Beverly Hills Cop. Sorry, listeners, that's a segment that you'll never hear. But when we come back, let's talk about Beverly Hills Cop one last time.
All right.
Martin Brest's career is wild and undefinable, but could easily be defined by this. His first 3 movies starred George Burns, Robert De Niro, Eddie Murphy, Charles Grodin, and Lee fucking Strasberg. And his last 3 movies starred Al Hoo-Ha Pacino, Ben Affleck, Brad Pitt, Chris O'Donnell, Claire Forlani, and Jennifer Lopez. Is he a victim of his talent's talent? What does he do to elevate Beverly Hills Cop other than say, hey, cast that kid from Saturday Night Live?
I think he believes in his actors, and I think he believes in their ability to breathe life into what they're doing, and I believe that he's very good at making human stakes in the movie, so that like the comedy is funny and the action is riveting, and that the stakes are high because we're in touch with the deep humanity of the characters. I think he sees that in people and brings it out in them effectively.
Greg.
I think that's a really great point, actually. That, like, you know, even though I feel like Meet Joe Black is pretty discombobulated, and there's that weird scene where he gets hit by a car. And,
yeah, there is.
There is that scene.
Yeah, and he, like, speak in, like, a strange patois at one point to a woman. It's a showpiece still for Brad Pitt. Like, that movie just, like, what I can tell you about the movie is it just, like, is Brad Pitt doing a bunch of stuff. And then Geely is this star power movie of 2 of, like, the biggest names of the day. And with Scent of a Woman, like, that is a showpiece for Al Pacino to, like, do Al Pacino,
Jordan.
but in a way that movie defined. Like, between that and Heat, I feel like that cements the sort of wide-eyed shouting register of Al Pacino.
Perfected in the Dunkachino.
I feel like hoo-ha. I feel like Scent of a Woman to Dunkachino was just one easy step.
One step, a short walk, and then Beverly Hills Cop. It's a showcase for Eddie Murphy. Like, he creates actor showcases.
But I will say also, sorry to interrupt you, Ryan, but I will just say one last thing. Also, this dude loves vehicles, and he loves the potential of vehicles in his movie. And in this movie, it comes across mostly in that truck chase scene, but there's a part of that where it's like the truck is avoiding hitting cars, and that's called creating tension, Ryan. And then the truck starts to hit cars, and that's releasing that tension, and the cars, they go a-flying. And the same guy is like, I want to see the haunted humanity in Axel, but then I also want to see these cars just get obliterated by this big old truck.
Absolutely.
There's this perfect moment of Eddie Murphy right in the beginning where he just grabs onto the chain because he knows that he's Axel Foley. So, like, he knows shit's about to happen. And I don't remember if I, like, read this or thought of it on my own, but that Eddie Murphy is the true Bugs Bunny actor.
Oh!
And it's because, like, he is always smarter, and it's almost like he knows the writers of the cartoon. And, like, everyone else is acting a fool around him, but he is, if he ever does it, it's very purposeful. It's not like just to get the laughs. It's for another reason. And watching him grab that chain, he's just like, yeah, I know that something's bad about to happen. I think that when Eddie Murphy's career sort of took missteps is when he stopped always feeling like he was looking at us, but not, and then actually started looking at us.
Yeah.
You know, like it was actually breaking the fourth wall, saying like, isn't this crazy?
It's funny because I was reading about Breast, and part of what he said was like, it's hard to make movies and not get like caught up in the Hollywood machine. And he's like, and when that starts to happen to me, I want to move away from making movies. And he's like, I know that's going to happen. It's part of making movies.
Meet Joe Black. Yeah,
and it happens, right? He has like 3 absolute stinkeroos in a row, ending with Geely, which is just like such a tragic misstep of a movie, and like a literal career ender for him. Like, he looked at the results of that and was just like, it is the end for me. But I think that he is right to understand that contact with the movie industry has a tendency to dehumanize, and that you can no longer tell human stories if you have allowed yourself to become dehumanized by the industry that creates them.
To believe that the guy who directed this movie so well is the guy who threw Brad Pitt through 3 different cars in 2 seconds is just insane.
Again, he conceives of the human stakes, but also he's like, I do want to see someone just get like bounced off cars. I think we all do, really.
And also, Meet Joe Black was almost 3 hours long. Like,
at
a
an
certain
epic
point,
movie.
It's a saga.
You'll meet death by the time it's over.
That's a good one. When we were talking about buddy cop movies, we actually didn't mention what is probably my favorite of all time, and that's Midnight Run. And that's his movie after this? No, just before this.
Yeah.
And it's his second movie. And I think that the other thing that he does is, like, look, he's not ever mentioned in this list of, like, his comrades, compatriots with Spielberg and Scorsese at the time, De Palma. But his ability in these 2 movies, Beverly Hills Cop and Midnight Run, to let people like Grodin and Murphy go for exactly as long as we want to see them, like the anti-Judd Apatow, I think is such a fucking skill.
Yeah, like, how tempted would you be to have that super cop scene run a little bit longer, right? Like, it's so funny the actors are laughing during it, but the way you have to leave them wanting more, and that takes skill to do. I don't know if I could do it myself as a director. No. I probably couldn't, everybody. I know what you're thinking. Certainly you could, Greg, but no, I couldn't.
Oh, Greg,
You're like, and I
Jordan
could kick that 52-yard field goal as well. Thank you very much.
Probably not. I mean, I have to admit that, having never kicked a football, that guy's probably better.
I just wonder if, like, all of these things that you're talking about him sort of kept him out of the Spielberg level success, you know?
Yeah.
Could he have ever gotten
Well,
there?
I mean, when you were like, I don't want to lose my humanity to this thing and I'm going to have to know when to walk away, part of that is I'm not going to work as hard as someone like Spielberg, and I'm not going to I don't want to lose myself in this. I think Spielberg, he understands his own life through making movies about it. It took so long for him to do that. He couldn't even make a movie that was literally about his life until nearly the end of his career, and it's obvious why, because if you watch that movie, it's super traumatic. And also, if you watch that movie, you see how parts of it are in every movie he's made up until then. But that's not what this guy wanted. That's not what Brest wanted. I think what Brest wanted was to have a job of money that you go and you do, and you're you have a fun time, you feel good about the product of it, and then when it's grabbing hold of you and making your life miserable, you just call it.
Yeah. Uh-oh. You know what that sound means? It is speed round time. We are all very serious devotees of film criticism here, so how freaking cool was it to see that truck smash all those cars in the beginning?
And that is the magic of movies, my friends.
Okay.
Greg.
Let's talk about Jenny real quick. We brushed upon her before, but this movie or this year, this season has not been spectacular for female roles. This is a good one, right? She is talented.
I like Jenny. Jenny's a cool girl.
Yeah.
Jenny's a cool girl. She can fucking hang.
With Eddie Murphy.
And she's like, listen, if this is about our friend getting killed, I'm in.
Yeah.
She's got the right amount of fearless about her. She is going to be a kind of accessory character given the way things were in the day. But Jenny's cool. I think Jenny makes a bigger impact than the size of her role.
Jordan.
Looking at 1984, Jenny is heads and tails of almost every other role that there is for women. And I tell you, the fact that she has chemistry with our lead character, but they're just friends. The fact that she literally there's a lot of give and take in those scenes, and he comes at her pretty hard, and she gives it back in a very even-handed way, and then she's integral to the plot, and she doesn't fucking just die. She makes it all the way to the end. So she neither fucks nor dies, and yet she's still important to the movie. Wow. Yeah. For 1984,
and Axel still
something.
respects her.
Yeah.
I think there's one integral part where Axel Foley, just based on the way he acts, gets whatever he wants whenever he wants. And they're going back to her nice-ass car, and he's like, I'll drive. And she's like, no, you will not.
Yeah.
And he just slowly goes around to the passenger seat. He's okay.
I do also think this movie explores men being enamored of not just women as objects, but women and femininity. There's a lot of in this whole series. There's a lot of men who affect kind of feminine style to their talk and to their behavior, and kind of put on a feminine persona. And if you really watch all the performances in this series, on balance, they're not making fun of men like that. The point seems to be that these men like to act like that.
Great.
Yeah.
And part of that is because he likes to be with Jenny. He sees the value in women. And he doesn't kind of act effeminate for a joke. And especially now, look at everything we know about Eddie Murphy. We know that, he's not just 100% a cishet gentleman himself, right? He seems to, enjoy the feminine. And I think you see that in this movie, and it's kind of cool.
Could this movie have used more Paul Reiser? Could every movie use more Paul Reiser?
I think it had the right amount of this Paul Reiser. With this is
Jordan.
a concentrated dose of what Paul Reiser is doing.
This is watered down.
I love that it really is just this tiny, and you think he's almost a plant and payoff, but no, it's just what you see at the beginning, and then he goes, "This isn't my locker," and then you never see him again.
He walks out of the movie.
Jordan.
He's I'm not supposed to be here,
movie.
and he departs forever. Probably the perfect amount, because we were getting a high riser. We were getting a high concentration of the Paul Reiser experience.
I have one of the lesser iconic lines from this movie I have used my entire life. Whenever it's an uncomfortable situation, I say, "This is not my locker," and I just leave the room.
Also, weird note, right before Paul Reiser appears on screen, someone who looks a lot like Paul Reiser appears on the screen. And for a second, you're like, is that Paul Reiser? And then Paul Reiser literally walks onto the screen. You're like, no, that's Paul Reiser.
Did I pitch you guys my court show where he's the judge, and when he comes in, everybody says, Paul Reiser?
Paul Reiser.
Did I pitch that? I can't remember if I said that in this
Give
episode.
yourself a couple points.
Yeah,
No, I haven't.
Ryan.
The one time I think I've
Ryan.
been able to pick up on a pun direction here.
That's a Jordan point then.
Jordan.
And then finally, was there too many bananas in the tailpipe or not enough? It was like four went in
Sweet
there?
spot of bananas. What the fuck does a banana in the tailpipe do?
Well, I guess the point is it blocks up the tailpipe, which means the engine can't breathe because it can't breathe out the exhaust, and so it can't then also breathe in the oxygen.
I was like, is this like an interaction with potassium or something? Like, what is this?
But I don't know that much about cars, and so I was like, should I put a banana in my tailpipe? You need one, but you just can't do four.
Yeah.
I mean, like, aren't cars built differently now? Because of this movie?
Yeah,
right?
I think if you drive a Tesla, you can
Talking about influence.
Yes. Everyone signed up for the Navy because of Top Gun, and everybody built cars differently because of Beverly Hills Cop. Mm-hmm. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, let's get some awards out. Before we give Beverly Hills Cop all of its flowers, as they say, I do want to make some recommendations. If you have seen this movie, or if you've not seen this movie, you've just listened to this show. Jordan, let's start with you. What do you recommend to the audience?
Maxine has come up in this conversation, and I think if you want to see a good 80s homage that doesn't focus in on like the jazzercise portion of the decade that has become sort of sterile and sort of overproduced in our pop culture today, if you want to see a new release that goes there, I think that's a good option. Another one that I have mentioned in this conversation, Showdown in Little Tokyo, if you want some LA crime, buddy cop weirdness, and if you really want to if you want to do the darker version of this LA crime, Magnetic Black Star Deep Cover, starring Lawrence Fishburne as, I believe, an DEA agent undercover. And then my last recommendation will be the Angel trilogy. If you want to do some Hollywood Boulevard, Red Light District, a very formative influence on the movie Maxine. So we'll bring like Maxine with like the authenticity that like inspired Maxine.
The Angel trilogy is a classic example of movies that I have not seen, but memorized the movie poster at my local video store when I was a kid.
Is she the one that's like a schoolgirl by day?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember we've talked about this season.
It's actually phenomenal. And each of the three is very different, but I think each of the three of them succeed completely.
Because it's Angel, Avenging Angel, and then Angels in the Outfield. Those are the three.
Yeah, for the kids.
Yeah.
Ryan, obviously, she's my opponent, and so I have to say that those were terrible, but I believe, honestly, those were the best recommendations ever given in this segment. We're usually like, you have to check out Citizen Kane. If you like movies, this is the best movie. I know I said it last week, but you really got to check it out, everyone.
You've probably never heard of Avengers Infinity War.
I've literally recommended Hamlet on this show. Should I do my recommendation?
Yes, please. I'll give Jordan a point.
And from the first thought, best thought category, I'm going to recommend everybody watch 2024's Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F. Because I watched that today, and I realized I was like, I should watch this movie before the show because I don't know, it's just like it's Kismet, It
is weird that we're doing this and that happened.
Yeah, and so I was like, why don't I want to? And I was like, because this era has to let go, and it won't do it. But then I put it on. I was like, here's what you do: you'll just play some video games and put it on in the background, and you'll just see what you think. And it won me over. He's funny. I would say there's less of that, like, let the actors do whatever they want, and more of, like, a script that I think is just has, like, a lot of funny one-liners and funny bits. It is probably the second best Beverly Hills Cop movie, and I enjoyed it, and honestly, it made some interesting points, like, it's about things, and, I fully recommend it for a movie that you just put on and have a good time with.
I had one of those birthday parties when I was a kid where we all went to the movies and then went to dinner, and one of the birthdays was Beverly Hills Cop 3, and my friends were pissed at me like I fucking made the movie.
Yeah.
It sucked.
There's a kind of probably an eye-rolly joke. I was in such a good mood today, though, and I'm on record on this show. Whatever my mood is, like, that's worth a star in either direction for me. I was in a good mood when I put it on, but there was a joke that I'm sure you would hate, Ryan, which is one of the cops is like looking through his file, and he's like, looks like you had a problem in 82. Looks like you had a couple problems in 87. I'm like, wow, this was a mess in 94. Yeah, that third one was bad.
That's hilarious. I'm going to go back to what we also talked about before, which is Midnight Run. I do think this is a perfect movie. It's Martin Brest's best movie, as much as I love Beverly Hills Cop. And although I do claim that there are a lot of people who love this movie, I don't think it's enough. and Midnight Run people should watch. All right, let's give the Beverly Hills Cop some awards. Greg, we're starting with you. Music moment.
It is hard not to choose that, but I'm going to go with they go to the strip club. And playing in the background is Nasty Girl.
That diegetic music.
Yeah, and they literally, it is literally turned off towards the end of the scene, which I thought was a good moment too, because it completely changes the whole vibe of the establishment, which is appropriate for an armed robbery. But Nasty Girl, I just think it's a nice change of pace in a movie that is scored almost exclusively by one part of one song that I got a little tired of maybe by the end.
Also, we didn't get to this in trivia, but that was that dancer's actual song was Nasty Girl.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Beautiful dancers.
Jordan, what do you got for musical moment?
I mean, I feel like someone has to say Axel F. I feel like someone has to say the theme song. I'm going to say the theme song. That first time when you hear it, I really was like, wow. It's been with us. I said, like, I was like, this is the... It started playing. Again, I'm watching it with two younger people than me. And I was like, this is the... I was like, oh, here it comes. Like the Beverly Hills Cop theme song. And they were like, this is where this comes from?
But see, don't they know... I wonder if this generation is more familiar with that, not the... bum 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 ba-dum bum bum, but the second part, which is bum bum ba-dum ba-dum bum bum, because on TikTok, one of the big popular sounds is like Peter Griffin from Family Guy going ha 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 ha.
Interesting.
And that is the background
Insight.
to a fair amount of TikTok where somebody's like usually being bad at something.
Me and my wife are not that different in age, but sometimes it comes up, and we got in an argument over what's more iconic: Con from King of the Hills singing of the Beverly Hills Cop thing, or Peter Griffith singing it. I'm going to give that to Jordan. How could I not? It's Axel F. Jordan, 84 fashion. What just screamed 84?
I mean, there's the great moment of Eddie walking by the two Michael Jacksons and laughing at them. And then, but I have to go with Lisa Eilbacher's blue leather jacket. Jenny's blue leather jacket that she wears in a scene where she's in Eddie's hotel room with him. Because there's just like, what's that?
A lot of pleats on it?
Yes, I was just going to say, the pleats in that leather, the shoulder structuring on it, the like, I think it's like a little like mock collar. That to me was just like, this is the costume designer being like, I'm going to get something cool for this art gallery boss.
It's
like,
80s time.
She would know what's in. She would know what's fashion. And that production designer and that costume designer would too. So she was like, this woman is going to wear something that meets the moment in 1984. And she picked that leather jacket. And so it's the blue pleated leather.
It's crazy watching older movies because it proves that for all of time, boys dress like shit and girls always tried to like look hot.
Man, there's like no better incentive to be in a movie than your costume is just like jeans, a t-shirt, and a sweatshirt. Man, that's going to be like a few months of comfort.
If you want to see a very underappreciated Michelle Yeoh performance, watch Yes, Madam from like the 1980s. And yes, it's a great movie. It's her and Cynthia Rothrock coming together, a clash, uniting of the Titans. But also, the first time I watched it, I counted every time she changed wardrobe, and she is in 14 different outfits in like an 80-minute movie. Every time the scene cuts, it doesn't matter if it's the same day, she's in a new outfit.
Yeah, you could do that with Jenny. Jenny has a lookbook. Like, I mean, she's got a nice like jersey gray dress, like slouching off the shoulder, like a nice collar on that. And then she's got what is mine, which is a lot of times when we're talking about the fashion from these movies, it's like not the actual fashion as existed in situ in the real world. It's instead this like, this is what it looks like. This is what walked the runway that year.
Of course.
But Jenny has, when she works at she has a very, very like modest, it's fashionable, but it's not like ostentatious. It's a suit.
The white blazer.
Yeah, the white blazer and then a white skirt. It's got like a very nice lapel. It's got like not the intense shoulder that you sometimes think of the 80s, but there is structure there. It is padded. And then I love the way she's got her hair. She's got like curl on blast, the way like women of that time really did. Like get the most curl, the most volume you can.
Oh, yeah.
But she's like owning it, killing it. I love the eyeliner that she's wearing, like very dramatic eye. And honestly, she looks like pictures of like my mom and my aunts at that time. Like she's beautiful as they were, but she looks very much of her time. And I like how it's not like a big headband that dangles to the ground and like this huge dramatic collar. Like this is what existed in the world. And I like seeing it again because that was my childhood when things made sense.
Do you know who she looks like? Is like when you would have to go with your mom when she got her nails done and all the pictures of those women, like on the Duran Duran Rio cover. You know that artist that just did.
We've literally seen like that look in several movies where a woman is like looks exactly like that. Yeah.
Oh, of course.
I want to give it to the blue leather jacket because that's what I want to own. But Greg, your description of her was just great. That gets the point.
It really is. It's wonderful.
I love fashion.
Cringiest moment, Greg.
Okay, this movie has such an interesting relationship with cringiness because we know that Eddie Murphy has like a hit and miss record with like jokes about women and jokes about queer people. But the movie seems to be inviting you to imagine that it's going further than it actually is a lot of times. And I found that very engaging because is this movie making fun of these things or is it kind of celebrating them? Are we allowed to not ever make any reference to differences?
I almost wonder, like, honestly, because of who Eddie Murphy was at the time, did he do gay voices just so they could put that in the trailer so then people would come see the movie because they know that that's what people wanted?
This is what I've thought about this a lot today, and this is what my final answer on this is, especially having seen Axel F, the Beverly Hills Cop Axel F, because they go to that same strip club, but instead of there being strippers there, it's like an effeminate male lounge singer. Mm-hmm. I think that he likes to act effeminate. And he has found a way to do that he's able to channel, like his masculinity isn't threatened by playing these characters. But what he likes is embracing the feminine. He doesn't want to make fun of it. He wants to do that because it feels good to do that. It feels good to play in that way. And we all, intrinsically know that. And then it scares some people, and that wanting to do it becomes like this intense not wanting to do it or something. Gets all mixed up. But I will say there's this one moment where I think the movie loses control of the racial message, and it's when he actually does drop the N-bomb. And it's not because he says the N-word. It's because I liked that the movie was getting right up to the line without going over. But it's like he's what we would later come to say, like, playing the race card. The joke is he's pretending that there's racism where there's really not, and he's using that to gain an advantage. And it's just like, I feel like he goes over the line there, and then he also erases the fact that there was so much rampant racism that kept people out of places in the 80s. And it wasn't like
racism.
It wasn't that the people saying that, it was that they were just doing that to get ahead. That I didn't like the feel of that, I guess.
That makes sense. Jordan, what do you got for cringiest moment?
For me, it's cops don't press charges against us.
Yeah, it's like the audience nodding enthusiastically.
Yeah, it's like, sure fucking don't. Sure fucking don't, huh?
Yeah, the whole Top Gun of it all, like, this is going to get kids to want to be a cop. Like how good that was for enlisting people into the Navy. This may have been for enlisting people into the police force. Yeah, I'm going to give that one to Jordan. Jordan, we're going to start with you for director's signature moment. What was the breastiest part?
The breastiest moment of the movie. Gosh. I'm going to go with, like, from the perspective of what we were talking about earlier with human stories and Martin Brest's sort of explanation that, like, you can lose the ability to tell human stories in this industry because you sort of stop being, sounds like, because you kind of stop being in touch with humanity at a certain point, perhaps. And the way he gives actors space, I will go with, I don't know why, but I feel like I'm going to go with Eddie in the bar with Mikey at the beginning, where they're chopping it up and they're happy to see each other again and they're joking around, and then the guy suggests that they steal a car. And you see that, like, great dynamism that Eddie has where he's being funny, but then, like, the smile kind of softens. He's like, I'm a cop now. And you can see on his face, like, he's just so disappointed that his friend might land himself back in jail. And they talk about how they stole a car when they were young and the Cadillac, and they're laughing about it. And Eddie's like, why didn't you ever turn me in? And the guy's like, you really don't, like, you don't know why I didn't turn. And he's like, because I love you, man.
Yeah.
And it's a funny scene that's a touching scene. So I'm going to go with that.
The only time that, like, really, that is his one true love of the movie. Like, they don't have him hook up with Jenny to almost keep the Mikey love alive. In that scene, it has one of my favorite movie things, because it's never happened to me, or I've never done it, where two dudes are talking and one grabs the other by the back of the neck as hard as they can.
Yeah.
That has never happened to me before.
That's very European. If you watch soccer, the European men will be so like...
point.
Yeah, they'll be so passionate with each other, and it's really a shame that, like, Americans...
Greg and I have been best friends for 25 years. We've never touched.
Imagine I grabbed the back of your head. Look, like, that much eye contact, that would, like, wither us.
I would start screaming.
Why?
No, it's fascinating to watch
to
even, like, international action movies, like, particularly Indian action movies. Like, before I went and saw, like, RRR, there are more movies than that, but... when I walked into it, I said to my friend who I went with, I was like, if there is not a 6-minute interlude devoted to the power of male friendship in this movie,
where they literally sing to each other,
fucking walking out. And then I was delivered more than I could have possibly imagined. Yeah. And it's interesting. It's a really fascinating subject, like the sort of male intimacy bonding sort of platonic romance that there is a more comfortable physical affection and around in some international titles, just like cultural differences than ours, because there is a very much like repellent, like it has to be like dick jokes here. Not to bring up Showdown in Little Tokyo again, but it just truly, there is a scene in that where Dolph Lundgren's character is like, it's in the middle of a shootout. Like, it's, like, they're about to get sieged by a bunch of bad guys. And Brandon Lee had seen Dolph Lundgren getting in the hot tub earlier, like a scene prior. And while they're getting shot at, Brandon Lee has to tell him for some reason, you have the biggest dick I've ever seen on a man.
Oh my
God.
On a man.
Now? And not like innuendo like you would get with The Rock and Jason Statham, just like fully saying it. But like, we can fully say that in American action movies somehow, but, like, they would never hug. Like, they would never, like, grab each other by the back of the neck and, like, touch foreheads. Like, that's gay.
Funny story, one of the only notes that the studio gave back to the filmmakers for Beverly Hills Cop was to cut down the Mikey and Axel scene because they said, I love you too much. They wanted it cut in half, the amount of times that they say, I love you, because it was too gay. Yeah.
Yeah, the movie, it's a hard thing for the movie to do because they have to sell that these are best friends. Like, I think it's easy to miss that they're not just like guys from the neighborhood. They're best buddies.
Right.
You know, and that's a big part of it. And that, like, you know, their paths diverged. One went to prison and stayed a criminal. The other didn't and then stayed and became a cop. And the criminal dies and the cop avenges him.
I have that in my family. That is a dynamic I have in my family. It's crazy. Greg, director signature moment.
I'm going with the big truck smashing cars. Each of these movies, like, it's just like a love letter to vehicles, and I'm a big fan of that. And that truck,
De Niro and Grodin find their way into a plane.
Yeah,
for no reason in Midnight Run, they're just in a plane now.
They cruise down the road, and that truck that has like no doors is like fully exposed. There's like a huge This guy loves car chases and action scenes involving cars, and then he comes up with cool ideas. And if you watch this truck absolutely obliterating,
it's incredible. It's
really
an incredible car destruction scene.
If you like that, like online, the hydraulic press destroying things, or if you like the super slow-mo of like things blowing up, like you will like this scene.
That's amazing, Greg. But Jordan gets that point because I do think that Martin Brest is all about those moments in between the car chases. Last one, I don't know how we're going to do this shit. Pound for pound performance of Eddie Murphy in Beverly Hills Cop. Greg, we'll start with you.
Okay. I think I know what the right answer is, but what I'm going to go with is Gilbert R. Hill, who's Inspector Todd, who's his first boss.
A real cop, right?
He's feasting.
I was so hyped anytime this guy was on the screen. Like, we have this award because sometimes you only get to be on screen for 4 minutes. But there's nothing that says you can't own those 4 minutes. They're like, chewing my ass out. Can't you see I got no ass? And honestly, it's not just him. It's the way that he and Eddie Murphy play off of each other. And the fact that he never breaks even a little bit to like be like, I see that you're joking and I do think it's kind of funny. He just stays on him. He stays true to his own character.
Yeah, I wonder when we were earlier talking about him, if there wasn't a little bit of like, you're literally the only other black person in this building. So that's why I sort of, you know, like there is this father-son dynamic in 3 minutes of movie.
Yeah.
You know. Jordan, who do you got for best performance?
It's Bronson Pinchot as Serge. It's so weird because like obviously we know Bronson as Balky.
Hell yeah.
So like he is somebody who like plays these characters with these international characters who like.
Yeah, he found a thing
from somewhere else, Stan.
Yeah, exactly. My personal favorite Bronson Pinchot is the movie Second Sight, where he plays a psychic with John Larroquette.
With John Larroquette?
Loved
No one else
Sight.
has seen that movie.
Again, house favorite. Think we had it on tape. But just that scene where he's telling him he needs to see Jenny, like he's like an intermediary at the gallery, he's trying to go see Jenny, and he is just reading Axel. You feel like he thinks he's lying. He's not sure. He's doing the like, she's in a car, like it's busy. It's like the kind of vibe of like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm going through a tunnel, I can't hear you. But then like the preposterous accent, the way he's fully committed to it, but his performance is so dry. And then that one guy walks up,
yes.
That one guy walks up with his shirt deeply open, and he's like, "What is this? Like, don't get rid of this. Like, that's not sexy. That's not sexy. It's animal. It's not sexy. It's animal." And just that weird interact where it's like Eddie has arrived in LA and he's met like the most LA person he's going to meet in this movie, and then the entire conversation they have about like espressos and martinis, and hearing him and like. Eddie being like, "Get the fuck out," and him being like, "I'm so serious," over and over. Like,
I can't.
I cannot. I'm so serious. Is so funny to like in that moment. He is meeting Eddie Murphy like in the like he couldn't. I'm not saying he could be Eddie for an entire movie, but in that moment, he is giving as good as he gets opposite Eddie Murphy. It is just this preposterous character. I'm gonna go watch that scene again when we're done recording here. He's so funny.
He's so good in it that even though there's no real reason for his character to ever appear in it again, he's in every other movie, right?
None.
Well, there's this the get the fuck out part is so amazing because they both start imitating each other and like this half making fun but like half bonding moment, like where they're both trying to one up each other's high pitch, and like "Don't be stupid" is one of the lines of the movie.
Don't be stupid.
Yeah.
Don't be stupid.
And again, it's another one of these characters that it's like it could have been played really broad, and maybe in some ways it is, but honestly, when you're watching him, you're like, this feels like a fucking person.
Yeah.
No,
this feels like somebody I could bump
Pinchot is
into.
grounding this character.
Yeah.
As he's
and
like
again,
Ahmed Foley, like
Ahmed Foley. That's so smart. That's so smart. Like, because Axel Foley is a fucked up name that doesn't make sense to anybody. So if you're not from this country, there's no way you're going to think that somebody is saying that their name is Axel Foley. But Ahmed, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's an actual name.
The guy with the shirt unbuttoned, they had equal lines. And then Bronson Pinchot came on and did Serge, and they were like, "You, other guy, you have zero lines
he just
now.
bossed him.
All you
Wow.
get is this one walk up where he
I
buttons
believe
his shirt.
it.
You're fucking cut." And Bronson, he said that like going into the audition, he had no idea what to do. He had no idea what the style of the movie was, so he just decided to do his the lady who always had done his makeup when he was on other sets. This very old lady who wore sunglasses while doing makeup, and he at one point disgustingly said, "Can you see with the sunglasses? Like, can you do the makeup?" And she's like, "Of course I can see. Don't be stupid." And then that was it. And it created a legendary character. So I love Inspector Todd, but that's going to Jordan. Guys, that is Beverly Hills Cop. We're going to take the quickest of breaks. I'm going to rack up the points, and then when we come back, we'll see what future Beverly Hills Cop has on this bracket. All right, I have tallied up the score, and Greg, you came in with a whopping 59 points.
Oh, wow, that is a lot of points.
Wow.
That's pretty good, right?
That's a lot. Yeah, that's a lot of points.
Jordan, over under your score. More or less than that.
Considering I haven't heard the indicator a single time.
Jordan.
Well, let me tell you this. The audience has, and they're annoyed by it. they don't like it.
I mean, I kind of like. I feel like Greg was really on the wavelength, so I would say under for me.
I scored the least, if that helps you guys.
Okay.
And Jordan, you had 70 points, and you are our winner this week.
Which might be the high score of the show ever. It's right up there anyway.
So congratulations, Jordan. Guys, overall, right? We cracked this movie open. Like, there's nothing else to talk about.
Yeah, it's a deep text, though. Honestly, like, I mean, I think there is a lot in there, but I think we've talked about it more than the average podcast.
Yeah, I think we really did. Like, we covered the fun and we covered the substantive. I feel like we did a great job here.
Guys, we did a wonderful job. Jordan, tell me about Feeling Seen.
Feeling Seen is a podcast that I host for the network Maximum Fun, and we have people involved in the creation of film and television and writers, directors, stars sometimes people who write about film and TV, and I have them, in addition to like discussing the work that they do, I have them bring a character to the conversation that they have felt represented by on screen to get at the relationship between being someone who creates art and someone who, like the rest of us out there who maybe don't do that as a paid profession, how the ingestion and the processing of art and stories and characters then fertilizes the ground for people to go forth and create their own work. So the influence between like consumption and creation. And we have some great, really fun, really emotional conversations. I'm just so grateful to anybody who says yes.
I'm going to shout this out to younger millennials and all the Gen Z out there who are listening. Thank you for listening. Don't fucking cherry pick episodes of Feeling Seen. Subscribe to it, please. I don't know what your guys' issue is with subscribing, but please just subscribe to it. And then the episode gets there every week.
It does. It just pops up. It just shows up.
Yeah, you don't have to do anything.
No fuss, no muss.
Neither fuss.
That's right.
Jordan, thank you so much for being here tonight. This was awesome.
Yeah, you were amazing. Not just because you've scored so many points and humiliated me on my own show, but just in general, you were great to have around.
No, thank you so much. I love doing podcasts because it's like the best way to hang out with friends, in my opinion. So thank you so much for having me on, and it's great to just gab about a great movie.
Well, unfortunately, you did sign that contract that this would be your only podcast from here on out that you'll ever appear on. So sorry about that.
Yeah, that's a send off for Feeling Seen. Was that plug?
Feeling not seen.
Yeah.
We have so much left in the season. We've got Amadeus. We've got A Nightmare on Elm Street. We've got Katie Walsh from the LA Times. And Greg, that's sort of it.
I can't believe how quickly it happened. And I'm freaking out a little bit because 84 has been such a wonderful season. Every movie has been at least
what a list.
A little bit better than what I either remembered or expected. And this movie's no exception. But 84 has just been an absolute treat. And I'm sorry we didn't do more movies. Honestly, I could do like 10 more. I feel like it's hard to face going away.
Jordan, do you have a clear favorite from 84? Is it Terminator, Gremlins, Ghostbusters, Temple of Doom? Probably not any of those.
Clear favorite. God, I'm gonna scan this list.
Paris, Texas, I thought was going to be a slam dunk, and I just don't know about that anymore.
Mike,
what did you say?
We thought it was going to be Paris, Texas, but then Mike sort of revealed himself not to be a fan of artistic endeavors. I think is what he said, right?
He said he hates movies and music and TV.
Yeah, he's like, this is inscrutable, and I only like things I can screw.
I'm only a fan of that which can be screwed.
Easily screwed it in one afternoon.
I am gonna plant a flag for a underloved movie. I am gonna go for David Lynch's Dune.
Okay.
Not in the running, but thank you so much.
Didn't make the top 16.
Yeah, if it's just from the top 16, there's just from the top, Splash.
No, didn't
not
make
in
it,
the running,
yeah.
but again.
I'm going by box office here, so I'm looking at this list, and Splash is 11, so I'm gonna go with Splash.
Splash or Dune might win, or it might be one of the 16. We don't know yet. Please hang with us. For Jordan, for Greg, I am Ryan, and remember, keep watching the